Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday. Hi, Jenny. Good to see you. Still waiting for Salty to join us. So she'll pop in here in a minute. And then we can get started on finishing up our notes on what all went down yesterday afternoon in the trial in Delphi. It was a very spicy afternoon because you have the state's case in chief being presented. You have the search warrant from Tony Liggett executed with assistance from the Indiana State Police, and some items of evidence in possession. And Rozzi is getting ready. Hi, Butterfly. Thank you so much for jumping in here to mod. I appreciate that. My camera seems a little bit off. That's no better. Anyway, so Rosie's getting ready to cross-examine Liggett, and then we're going to hear from David Vido, and there's a very long cross-examination from Rozzi. That starts at 2:30. The cross of Liggett starts at 2:30, and we don't hear from Vido till Jiminy Christmas. 5 pages. Oh, we go on break at 3:30. And then after we get back from break at about 2 o'clock, we finally get to hear from Vido. So that's a good long cross-examination from 2:30 to 3:30. An hour cross. There's Salty. Come on up.
Hello, how are you?
Outstanding. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I had to grab a quick lunch real quick. Oh, but I'm good. I'm here.
Good.
And I'm ready to hear the rest of your notes. I mean, goodness.
Yeah, the cross-examinations tend to get a little bit testy, and there are lots of objections from Mr. McClelland, and most of them are granted, but not all of them. So let's just jump right in. I think there was one thing that I forgot to mention last night, but like the very last thing that Liggett testified to on direct was that Sheriff Liggett ran an ATF trace on the gun that they recovered from Richard Allen's home. And he found from that gun registration that it was legally registered to Richard Allen, and that according to the records, he had been the only owner of that gun. But he didn't ask him when that gun had been purchased. So, and this is a point I saw on a couple of other channels. Rozzi on Cross also never asked when that gun was purchased. So we don't know if Richard Allen had purchased that gun before or after February 13th of 2017, based on testimony that we heard or didn't hear yesterday.
Well, that's important, to when he obtained the gun and if he was the only owner. That should have been in the report, right? If you go and look the gun up and see that information, it's going to show when that gun was purchased.
Right. And so I would assume that was part of the discovery. It wasn't that report was not presented yesterday into evidence. It wasn't published. The jury didn't see it. They just verbally asked him, did you run it? And what did you discover in running that trace? So I would assume that report, I'm hoping that the defense is sharp enough to say, okay, we want a copy of that report. And then they saw the report and they saw that it was prior to February 13th, 2017. But you know what happens when you assume.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good piece of information to know for sure.
So at 2:32 p.m., Rozzi begins his cross. And the very first thing that he asked about was, Sheriff Liggett, were you in the middle of an election in October of 2022? Yes. And if you won that election, what would be your pay raise from detective to sheriff? Overrules the objection. So she allows Mr. Ripley to proceed with the question. And Sheriff testified that his pay increase, if he gets elected sheriff, his pay would increase by $50,000 approximately. So Rozzi goes, basically it would double from 50 to 100,000. Yes. So he's got $50,000 on the line. And he testified that he won his primary, and he had to win the general election, which would have been 2022. So exactly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff happened almost exactly 2 years ago. So the search warrant was October 13th. We're just, a week and a half past that, almost 2 weeks past that. 2 years and 2 weeks. Okay, so then they go into discussion about the search parties on February 13th. And Rozzi says this included lay people and multiple agencies. Yes. And some of these parties on the evening of the February 13th, some of these search parties staged around the Monon High Bridge, under the Monon High Bridge on Weber Road. He called it Weber Road. We know it's a private drive that goes back to the Weber house.
Yeah.
And Liggett says, not familiar with that. Okay. So the search ended around midnight that night. Yes. And there was a funeral owner, and I forget, I didn't write down the name, but I'm pretty sure his name was Abbott. The funeral home owner lived, in the general vicinity of that, kind of up on 300 North when it takes the bend to the north, past the cemetery. And Liggett says yes. And Rozzi asked him, so did you know that the search parties went all the way up there and searched around his property? Liggett says, no, I was not aware of that.
Well, why wouldn't he be aware of something like that? Where all they searched and did their things.
So most of his denials of any responsibility around the time of the original search and investigation were because he was quote unquote just a detective, and he wasn't the number one, he was the number two. So he's scapegoating a lot of that onto Tobe Lesenby, who was the number one at the time. And I don't know that we're going to hear from Tobe Lesenby. I don't think he's on the state's witness list. Because
I haven't heard much. Yeah, go ahead.
You would think by now we would have heard if he was going to be on the state's witness list. They're going chronologically. Tobe Lesenby should actually probably have been up there before Tony Liggett.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions to ask that guy. I mean, he come out and made some statements and things and did interviews and talked about specifics that I would like to know the answers to as to why he said some of the things. If the other investigators or detectives are going to be called up, why not get him up there as well?
Right. That it doesn't make sense for presenting the state's case unless they have something to hide by Tobe Lesenby testifying. So that'll be interesting if they do, and I'm not saying they do, I'm saying if they do, and if the defense thinks that they may be able to get something useful out of him, maybe he's on the defense list, the defense witness list.
He might be, which that would be very interesting.
But if he's not, I have questions, just like you. I have lots of questions. I probably have a good 3-hour live on questions for Tobe.
Right.
All right. Then they get into a discussion about the crime scene. Were you aware that there was a breach of the crime scene? Breach? What do you mean breach? Yeah, there were people that accessed the crime scene, and there were leaks of photos from the crime scene. No, I'm not sure I'm aware of that. So are you familiar with social media and that this is a social media, very high profile social media case? Yeah, of course. And that there were some photos that were leaked through social media. Oh, yes. Yeah, I do remember that. Okay.
Of course you do. Y'all made a really big deal about it.
So do you remember the sticks that were found at the crime scene? Yes. And it's your opinion that those sticks were used for concealment of the bodies? Yes. Interesting that question just kind of popped up. It didn't really go with the flow of the rest of the questioning. So then they start talking about Betsy Blair and the other eyewitnesses that saw a man somewhere around the Monon High Bridge trails that day on February 13th. And it didn't really get anywhere. I don't have a lot in my notes about that. He asked several times, do you believe such and such witness is a credible witness? Do you believe that Betsy Blair is a credible witness? Yes. Every time he asked that of any witness, he said, yes, that's a credible witness. Sarah, oh God, I forgot her last name already.
Carbaugh.
Yes.
Carbaugh.
Carbaugh. Yeah. Sarah Carbaugh. Do you believe Sarah Carbaugh is a credible witness? Yes. So I know why they're getting into this, because those witnesses are specifically mentioned in the affidavit for the search warrant. So
yes, they are.
He's drilling down into those eyewitnesses and the credibility of those eyewitnesses, because those are a key foundation for the search warrant, which was signed by Tony Liggett. So the affidavit for the search warrant focused on the timeline and focused on the eyewitnesses. Yes. Bree Wilbur is named, but the warrant doesn't mention that Bree Wilbur. Would you agree that the warrant does not mention Bree Wilbur mentioned a tall and muscular man? Objection. Sidebar. So they come back from the sidebar. Did you report to the judge? So this is Judge Diener, right? He was the first judge that signed the search warrant.
Yes.
Did you report to Judge Diener that Bree reported a tall and muscular man? Objection. Same objection as in the sidebar, Your Honor. Sustained. So then Rozzi gives up on this line of questioning about Bree Wilbur's testimony about a tall and muscular man. This is not allowed in. The jury's not allowed to hear it.
Well, okay. Well, that goes against what the other witnesses have seen. And if there was I don't doubt that she saw that type of individual. So we need to know who that person was now. So why wouldn't you? Did they investigate even, and look into that lead or her information as to her description?
Right. We heard several either slightly or greatly varying descriptions of unknown men that were encountered around the Monon High Bridge trails. Young men, old men, tall and muscular men, sketchy looking men. He looked scary, or I don't know what all the eyewitness statements were, but they varied across the board. Bloody and muddy. That was just Sarah Carbaugh. So we'll go to, so he focuses his attention now on the Hoosier Harvest store video. Sarah Carbaugh testified that she saw a bloody and muddy guy. Yes. And the camera is on the southwest corner of the Hoosier Harvest store building along County Road 300 North. Yes. And now you reviewed that video. Yes. Did you ever see an individual on that Hoosier Harvest store video? No. No individual is ever seen. And this is something that Ali Mata has been raising from like day one, like people going
no individuals seen on the Hoosier Harvester video. Is that what you just said?
Yes. And all the video that Tony Liggett reviewed where he found that black Ford Focus, he did not ever see any individual people walking along County Road 300 North in front of the Hoosier Harvest store.
So Sarah states that she saw the muddy and bloody man walking on 300 North, would have been toward that store, the Hoosier Harvest store.
Correct. And that's exactly your line. Your line of thinking is right along with what Rozzi's was.
Yeah.
Because he goes, hold on.
Because he has to pass that location to get back to his car.
Right. So let's take a look at this real quick. This is
If he came out of the woods and that, if he left via the cemetery, like people are speculating, and walked up 300 North, unless he went down the actual trails back to where he parked, like you were showing last night, where the little side trail is,
yep.
but could have still been seen probably, huh?
Right. So here is the Hoosier Harvest store. The camera is mounted on the southwest corner, and I'm not sure if it's pointed south, it's pointed west. I have a feeling it's kind of diagonal,
It
maybe
is.
like at a 45-degree angle.
Yeah, I've got pictures. I'll have to share them with you later so we can post them of the actual camera placement. It's right there, like on the corner of the building. You can see the whole front, allegedly.
So, Sarah Carbaugh's car is caught going eastbound on the camera at some time. I don't have it noted on here yet. I've got to transpose my notes and the official notes of what times what cars were seen when, because they went through a bunch of them fast, and there's no way I was keeping up with that.
Of the different cars they saw that day on the screenshots that he took.
Yes.
Okay.
So her car's seen traveling this way, and at some point between that Hoosier Harvest store camera, and I think it's actually past the Mears Farm entrance, which is down here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back. Let me put this aerial photo back to April of 2017 so it matches better right there, April of 2017. And we can see better on April of 2017 aerial. And this is a lot closer to what it was in February of 2017, obviously.
Yeah.
So there's that trail. There's the Mears Farm entrances right there where a couple of cars can and occasionally do park for people to go out and walk the trails. So Sarah Carbaugh, I'm pretty sure, was past this entrance and somewhere between there and the cemetery, which is down here, when she saw that bloody, quote unquote, bloody and muddy man.
Yeah.
And this is the line of questioning where he's going. So, all right, page 23, into the search parties, crime scene. Here we go. So, wow, I've gone 2 pages. Could the muddy and bloody guy have gone back to the crime scene? That's actually the last question. So if he's walking this way on the road, this is Rosie's line of questioning, and he's not ever seen on the Hoosier Harvest store camera, then the options are either he went north or he went south or he went back east and possibly back to the scene of the crime. Yes, and I'm paraphrasing here just for the sake of brevity, but so he couldn't have gone on County Road 300, so he either had to go this way or this way or this way or this way. Yes. Did you search those areas? Did you search the area between County Road 300 North and the trail? No. Did you search north, in the Mears Farm? No. Did you search north of the Mears Farm? No. So here's the CPS building where supposedly Rick was parked, and I'm pretty sure he admitted to parking there. So it's over here. So if there's a muddy and bloody guy walking over here this way, and say it's Rick Allen, which is the state's theory, how does he get from this point right here to there with all of the people that said they were on the trail that day around that time, including Derek German, who was looking for Abby and Libby and yelling for them? How did he get from here to his car here without being seen on the camera and without being seen muddy and bloody by anybody else besides Sarah Carbaugh? So that's where Rosie went. And the last question was, could the muddy and bloody guy have gone back to the scene of the crime? Possibly.
So, because no one else saw this muddy and bloody man the way Sarah did, now they're going to determine that he turned around and went back down to the crime scene, which now puts him back down there longer, even more time in the area.
Well, I think Rosie's point wasn't that he did go back.
Oh,
whoever
yeah,
did go back to the scene of the crime. It's just they don't know who, where, how, why, and the search parties, like, areas were limited to certain places and neglected other certain places.
Right. But if you got it, but I understand where he's going with that. But and I don't blame him for doing that, because then you're putting him still in that area a lot longer instead of going on toward the car. If it's Rick Allen, allegedly muddy and bloody, he would have went on to his car and got the hell out of there.
Right. And later we'll hear testimony that they didn't find any traces of blood in the car or DNA in the car when they did their search. But that's 5 years later. Can DNA last inside of a car for 5 years? Yes. That question and answer on cross. Not from Liggett. I think that may have been from Holeman or from Vido.
Hmm.
All right. So now he gets into this to impeaching, well, not necessarily impeaching, but being critical of Sarah Carbaugh's story. Are you aware that Sarah Carbaugh's story changed? So Tony Liggett was, quote unquote, just a detective, although he was very involved in the case. In 2017, he wasn't the sheriff. So his story is he wasn't privy to all the information that the sheriff was and to other investigators necessarily. Were you aware that her story changed? Not really. It started out as muddy and then changed to bloody. Oh, yes. Yeah. Right. So initially Liggett says, so he tries to downplay it a little bit. He says, initially her story did just say muddy, but the very next one did say bloody. And Rozzie's like, well, and then it changed to muddy and bloody. Did you know that there was a 3-week gap between when she says that she saw the muddy and bloody guy and when she actually reported it to law enforcement? 3-week gap. Yes, she didn't report it for 3 weeks. I was not aware of that.
He's unaware of a lot of things.
Yes, he's not. Hold on 1 second. Way too much talking for somebody who doesn't talk much.
Right. I know. I had to grab something to drink too before I came outside.
So this back and forth, I get zoned in on this back and forth, and I kind of forget to take notes, but I think there was something else important I missed in there in that back and forth about Sarah Carbaugh's story.
I am soon. I know Sleuthy will be on top of it because she's been transcribing all of the testimony and putting them into a Google Drive, and I've got all the ones that she's done so far. I know she'll be on top of this one as well, so we can try to look at because I've heard that his testimony was really not good. As far as the being cross-examined, they kind of really put a lot of questions in there for this guy, questioning his everything about him, so it's going to be interesting as we move through the case for sure.
Okay, yeah. Now I remember what it was. There's a discussion about anxiety. And Tony Liggett, anxiety, yes. She said he tries to say that, well, no, actually Rozzi brings it up that she was anxious or nervous about reporting it to the police. And Liggett tries to play that off as the reason why. He says, why wouldn't somebody be anxious or nervous when somebody was just murdered there?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, that's a given. The whole town's anxious and nervous. But if I saw a guy muddy and bloody, and I find out later that day or the next day what had happened out there, I'm calling the police. I'm not waiting. I understand she was a younger woman at the time. Go to your parents. That's what they're for. Get their advice. Tell them what you saw. They'll hold your hand while you go down there. I mean, all the things. You don't wait.
And I've heard reports that she actually went back to the trails to do her loops after the murders and before she reported, like in between. And I don't have verification of that.
Yeah, well, Sarah, I'm sorry to say, but Sarah has given me WSU Mom Kim vibes all over the place. I just need to be a part of this somehow, some way. And that's where I'm at with Sarah right now.
And that's kind of what Rozzi was insinuating without coming out and saying it. that
Mhm.
he was.
Me and him must think a lot alike. I need to go to work for his ass.
All right, so
My
we get
armchair
past.
detective resume is coming in.
Right. Then so he focuses his attention. They leave the Sarah Carbar story, and he says, "So Ford makes a lot of Ford Focuses, right? Yes, and a lot of them are dark in color, correct? Yes. And do you know how many of those have those type of wheels with spokes on them? No. Did you know that Ford mass produces those types of wheels? No, I did not know that.
Well, if that's your suspect vehicle and you got these screenshots of these various vehicles passing the crime scene, you do your due diligence to find out what these cars are, how many in the area do we have, and who owns those types of cars. I mean, we've seen this right here play out in the Koberger case. So, they need to give me a break with their shoddy investigation techniques.
Yeah, and this next part gets into an area that is of really, really high interest for me. So we start digging, and Rozzi starts digging into the relationship between the FBI and the Carroll County Sheriff's Office.
Oh, yay.
And from day one, Carroll County Sheriff's Office, Tobe Lesenby, has said, this is our investigation. We're the lead. Doug Carter acknowledged that that's the lead, but then says, well, but we kind of, in the public eye, make it look like we're the lead. And I have a I have YouTube video of that I'm going to share someday, probably not today because that'll go way too long, but it's only 8 minutes long, but it's a good one. But I want to ask permission from the channel that created it before I share. Anyway, first question. So this investigation from the start was a little bit chaotic, and Tony doesn't acknowledge that. He goes, so let me rephrase that. The investigation had a lot of moving parts early on. Yes, I will agree with that. So there were tensions between the Carroll County Sheriff's Office and the FBI. No, I'm not going to agree with that. So he says, he asks another question, and he tries to phrase it another way about there being tension between the FBI and, oh no, I know what he says, which I didn't put in my notes because this line of questioning was so fascinating to me that my note taking slipped. But he says something like the FBI basically was kicked off the case. He doesn't phrase it that way, but he phrases it close enough to that way that McClellan objects and doesn't let him finish that question. And Judge Gold sustains the objection, of course. I don't remember what the basis of the objection was, but calls for speculation or facts not in evidence or outside the scope of direct or so, I don't know, something like that. And she sustains the objection. But Liggett kind of tells on himself, and he goes, no, I wouldn't agree with you because even after that thing with the FBI in 2019, I could still call them and get them to help me with anything that I asked for.
Oh,
He
really?
said, this is like the most interesting, almost the most interesting phrase of the entire trial day 6 for me. He says, even after that thing with the FBI in 2019. Well, what thing? What thing, Tony?
Yeah.
What thing? What thing did you have with the FBI, and why did you have to call them to get to assist with the investigation? Why were they not assisting with it 24/7, 365?
So he said in 2019 he alleged that there was a thing with
he
the
didn't
FBI.
allege. He says there was a thing after that thing with the FBI in 2019.
You probably the thing about their saying, well, no, never mind.
there was a rift between them. And Rozzi asked about that. McClellan objected, so it wasn't allowed in evidence. But even after that was sustained, Liggett tells on himself. He says that even after that thing with the FBI in 2019, I could still get their help if I asked for it.
Yeah, I think I might know what that thing was. They didn't agree with the FBI's investigation into this case and what it was
And the
happened out
direction
there.
it was taking. Yep.
Yeah.
But that like I may, Like if I did a live or a video about just that subject, about the rift between the Carroll County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, I would title it "That Thing with the FBI."
Right.
Because that's what he said
Video
on the stand.
incoming if I remember later. I got you.
I didn't forget to take notes on that. I have that quotes, "That thing with the FBI in 2019. All right. So then we get to the lead sheet and the tip on Richard Allen. Someone cleared Richard Allen in Orion. So Orion is the database where they would put in tips from the lead sheets, and then they would put in the narratives from the people that followed up on those tips. So it's kind of an electronic way of storing and organizing the lead sheets that went with the reports from the follow-ups. And apparently there's some type of way to quote unquote clear people in Orion. And I'm familiar with a dispatch system for emergency management called 10-8. It's an amazing system. And you put in tickets, what's called tickets, where you enter basic information about it. And once it's vetted, then you send that to a team of boots on the ground people, and they go and they respond to it, whether it's a wellness check, whether it's a swift water rescue, whether it's a flooded house. Once they have those people either rescued or have gone there and found that they were rescued by somebody else, you go back into the system and you clear that ticket. I have a feeling it's something very similar to that someone went into that Orion system and they cleared Richard Allen as not being a suspect. Like there's some type of clearing a ticket thing, like in emergency management dispatch.
Yeah.
And Liggett's response is, quote unquote, someone cleared that shouldn't have. Doesn't know who, doesn't know when, doesn't know where, doesn't know why. Quote
Now
unquote,
remember whenever Sarah, or not Sarah, but Kathy S., the clerk, was testifying, she said it was marked cleared. The
yes,
tip that we found. Yeah.
correct. So then he asked about the changing of the timeline from 2017 to 2022, because originally in 2017 the lead sheet said he was there between 1 and 3. Then when Dueling talked to him, he changed it from 12:30 to 3:30. Then in 2022 he changed it to 12 to 1. He was only there for an hour from 12 to 1. And the state made a big deal out of saying that was evidence that he's changing his story, so he must be lying. Insinuated, obviously didn't say it that way because that would call for speculation. So Rozzi says, well, for Richard Allen to not perfectly recall the dates and times 5 years later, that wouldn't be unreasonable, right? Correct. So any witness and any testimony and any evidence that's collected 5 years after the fact, that's harder to do, correct? Correct. So would you agree with me that they do a little bit of a memory back and forth, like it's hard, your memory fades with time type of thing, and Liggett agrees with that. It's harder to remember things exactly and precisely 5 years later, and I definitely agree with that. And eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable anyway, way more reliable 5 years later. But what you testified to closer to the time of the incident is generally agreed upon, especially in court, whether it's for the prosecution or the defense. What you testified to closer to the time of the incident should be more accurate than your later recollection of that. That happens in cases all the time. So now we get into the gun thing, and this gets a little testy. Said, would you agree that the condition of the gun could be different could have been different in 2022 than it was in 2017? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you mean different. He goes, well, you have a gun, right? Correct. Yes. And it's got a lot of moving parts to it. Correct. Correct. So every time you use that, every time you clean it, every time the mechanisms inside of it are used, they change a little bit, right? And he says, well, I just don't really know what you mean. And he asks it again. And Nick objects. Objection asked and answered. Sustained. And I'm sitting there like, and Rozzie's sitting there like, he kind of looks at the judge, like tilts his head at the judge and is like, he didn't really answer it. Objection sustained. So that never really does get answered clearly by Liggett. Like, and I think what he's insinuating is if Rick Allen is using his gun even a couple of times a year, then every time he uses it, the condition of the metal that is being used by the toolmark expert when he ejects a round is going to change a little bit. It's going to be, it's going to be scraped down just a micromillimeter, just a fraction of a thing. And if it's 5 years later and he's used it dozens or maybe hundreds of times, then maybe the tool mark comparison may not be accurate. I think he's kind of like opening the door for that later on, because today I'm sure they are hearing from that tool mark expert today.
Yeah, yes, she's already on the stand this morning.
All right, so next question.
Little things are starting to trickle out, but I do know that she already took the witness stand this morning and was testifying. And I've done some, I researched her a little bit with her name and looked at some of her background and all that. But we'll save that for later. But go ahead.
Okay, so this is an interesting line of questioning. Then he goes into the video and the audio from the video, and he goes, was it possible that another man could have been beside the girls on that down the hill video and not the one that was actually in the video? And Liggett says, I don't think so. And Rozzi goes, it's not humanly possible? Liggett says, I don't think so. It's not, and I'm like, he testified on the stand that it's not humanly possible for there to be two people there by the girls. Not humanly possible. Rozzi asked him, it's not humanly possible. All right.
So, yeah. I'm just trying to digest what you're telling me and what their, what the interaction was between them. So I'm taking notes and stuff. So go ahead.
Right. So, but I know it's your theory that there was somebody that was there on the south end of the bridge.
Yeah.
To help them get down the hill to possibly a car at the private drive. So, but Tony Liggett says that's not humanly possible.
How come that's not humanly possible, Tony? Can you elaborate? It's a drive. You can literally take a car and drive down there and park. So that's humanly possible to do that. It's also humanly possible to walk to the south end of the bridge. We see the proof of that. It's also humanly possible to go down the hill. So are we on Mars? What's going on here?
No, we're in Carroll County. That's even better.
Well, nothing there is humanly possible. The truth is apparently not humanly possible there. Okay. Again, they're insulting our intelligence. This Carroll County is, and I don't like it.
Well, we'll see. The jury seems to be fairly engaged and fairly intelligent, although they didn't ask follow-up questions on Friday on a couple witnesses that I could have sworn they were going to ask jury questions to, and I was a little disappointed they didn't. Then we go into, after it's not humanly possible that there was another person who was by the girls who said the things that we heard on the audio, gets into the DNA. He says, so there was no DNA of Richard Allen found at the scene, correct? Correct. There were lots of electronic evidence that was found at his house, but there's no digital evidence of Richard Allen being tied to the crime scene. Is there? No. But so here he goes. So he asked about all the phones that they found at his house. Apparently they found a bunch of phones. They found a bunch of phone chargers. And he says, so there's nothing on any of that ties him to the scene of the crime. And then Liggett elaborates on that. And I can't believe that Rozzi didn't stop him. Tony Liggett sits up and he goes, it's interesting that we didn't find anything because he said he was on his stock ticker that day, and we didn't even find evidence of that.
Oh, really?
Yes, and Rozzi lets him
So,
say that on the stand.
so let me
Without
ask you
challenging it.
this. So we have heard they don't have the phone from 2017, and then you had talked. We discussed it last night, and you said that apparently that phone was upgraded in 2017, so the actual device was turned in. Now, was anything on the original phone backed up on a Google account or a cloud account so that it goes back onto your new phone, right? Because you know how that's how it works. Well, it
Right.
does today.
I actually
2017, I was like using throwaway phones. I don't remember. God, the 2017 was a long time ago, but a lot of times when you upgrade or switch your phones over and you enter your new information or your information to your new phone, it brings up all your stuff.
right.
So I don't know if he, because a lot of times if you're looking at stock tickers, maybe he had a specific app like, because a lot of people who trade go and they have specific apps, and I know this from the Web3 world that I was once a part of, and these guys take this stuff so seriously. They're checking their candlesticks and their tickers all day long, and so there's specific apps you can use where if you're moving money or investing, you have those apps and you can go and look at the details of what's happening that day. I wondered if he had a specific app or was he just going onto a website, you know what I mean? Versus having an app dedicated to that.
Right.
I would be looking for that.
We didn't hear any testimony of that, and I would guess if Tony Liggett says we didn't find any evidence of being on a stock ticker,
Yeah.
that that he may not have had that iCloud backup. I know I do, and I actually was talking about this with lawyer Lee when we were standing in line at lunch, to try and get back in after
Hmm.
lunch. When I get a phone, everything I have is backed up to the cloud, like all the pictures that I took on yesterday.
Yeah.
As soon as I get home and attach the Wi-Fi, boom, everything goes to my Gmail account,
Right.
my
Your
Google account.
contacts. I mean,
Yep.
everything. You have the option to save everything and then transfer to your new device. Um, I mean, it's kind of the same as watching the fish, and looking at that's what I did that day. But whether you can prove he did or didn't do that still doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but he's just out there walking like everybody else. Did that
Right.
they were they all out there specifically doing something other than walking the trails? We need to know.
Right. And I'm just going to mention this again in the interest of fairness to both sides. He also testified. Oh, maybe this comes in later during the Holeman. I think it comes in a Holeman. I'll talk about it then. I'll save it for later. But it's a point that I have a little bit of an issue with Rick Allen's report of what he was doing with the police. But anyway, so he asks about that. And Rozzi allows him to say, "Oh yeah, we didn't find any evidence that he was on a stock ticker like he said he was." There was no time of death determined, was there? No. None of Libby and Abby's clothing was found at Rick Allen's house during the execution of that search warrant, was there? No. So when you
So they
part,
didn't find. So that was a big thing, though, and because in the PCA it even says there was items missing or clothing missing from the scene, right?
yes,
So
there was
they
a
believed,
sock and underwear, I believe, if I remember right,
right. So their training led them to believe the perpetrator may have taken one of those items as a souvenir,
as a
which like
trophy.
serial killers tend to do that. But they didn't find those items in his home, anywhere in the home,
No, that's
like they
correct.
thought they would. They thought they would, though.
Yep.
Okay.
Sheriff Liggett testified they did not find
Yeah.
anything of Abby and Libby's at the scene of the crime. And then he also asked about the car. There was nothing found in the car that ties him to the scene of the crime, correct, and Liggett says, except the video from the Hoosier Harvest store. And Rozzi cuts him off before he can finish that. I think he tried to say that a couple of different times, and he talked about their circumstantial evidence a couple of times and put that out there for the jury to hear. And Rozzi actually kind of let him do it. So I don't know how he would have stopped him, because maybe the judge would have said, well, he's answering your question. Let him answer your question. I've seen that before. He talks a little bit about backing in And he says, so you saw him backed into where he was at work at CVS. This is CVS, not CPS. Yes. And you thought that was significant? Well, I don't know if I'd say it was significant, but why was that noteworthy to you? Well, because we heard reports that people saw a car backed into the CPS building on that day in 2013.
Okay. And again, I'm going to have to say the man told you he was there. And if he has a habit of backing in, that wouldn't be abnormal for him to do.
Right.
Okay.
And Rozzi basically says, so there's basically two ways to park. I mean, he goes, yeah,
I see a lot of the comments. I was trying to read back through a little bit of them while you were talking, but I didn't want to get distracted from what you were saying. And Hunter, yeah, innocent until proven guilty, and we still got to wait to see all the evidence. We're going over what we know so far. And you're right, Weber was at work, but law enforcement kept Weber's gun for 6 straight months. And before they ever give it back to him. So he was looked into and his property was searched. We're not saying he did anything. I'm not. Apparently he was cleared, and I guess they can prove he was at work and things like that. But yeah, we're just talking about what's come out and the evidence that as we know it. And there's a lot of questions about their evidence collection even. I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, you're fine. That's a key point. I mean, this is such a polarizing case.
Yeah.
Like the tweet that I did about the statements that Holeman said that Rick Allen made to him, it doesn't matter, it's over, it doesn't matter, it's over, is by far my most popular tweet, whatever you call them now on X, that I've ever had. And both camps are weighing in. The Rick Allen is guilty and the Rick Allen is not guilty are weighing in and putting their interpretation of that. And I'm still holding out for evidence either way, for conclusive evidence either way.
Yeah, and so far what we're seeing, it leads a lot of questions still as far as conclusive evidence and not just some circumstantial I was there, because literally he said he was there. But Annie, yes ma'am, there were rumors and the theory going around that there was items of the girls buried in the backyard, and that's why they dug up Richard Allen's backyard when they did that search warrant, but nothing was found. We just heard that. So
yeah, and they did mention, he did ask him about digging in the backyard, and he said, well, I know there was a metal detector used back there. And he goes, well, didn't they find something and try and dig it up? And he goes, oh yeah, I think they did.
Well, they probably did detect something and they decided to dig there.
Right. Well, there were
that
rumors
doesn't mean anything was found once they did it. Yeah.
Right. There were also rumors that they dug up his dead cat.
Yes, that was where kind of like the pet cemetery back there in Chad Daybell's backyard where he buried JJ and never mind. Yeah. So I understand why they would look in the ground if they saw a visible burn area back there, a burn pit, fireplace, whatever. If you're an investigator and you're doing your due diligence, you're going to check these areas out as well, because as an investigator, they should know people might want to burn things. They may want to burn items to get rid of the evidence. So I don't see anything wrong with checking the man's backyard. And if you're running a metal detector and you hit on something, now we need to find out what that is. I get it. But the point is nothing was found once they did the dug. That's what matters.
And that's what nothing was found that would tie Richard Allen to the scene or could be identified as belonging to or related to the deaths of Abby and Libby. And Liggett testified to that on the stand. So then Rozzi says, so you Carroll County has a pretty small jail, right? I mean, like what, maybe
very tiny.
30, 40 people. And Liggett says, well, we have a capacity for 34 prisoners, and we usually regularly have more than 50 prisoners in there. And I found an old comment article that said that they requested more resources for the jail and were denied.
Robin just made a very good point in chat. If they're claiming they don't have that device, his phone from 2017, how can he confirm or unconfirm that he was not looking at a stock ticker?
Right. He can't get positive confirmation. All he said was, we never found anything that proved it.
So that implies you looked?
Yes.
Looked
He
at
said,
what?
and all of the
This
devices
missing
that he
phone?
did have access to, and that's a good point because Rozzi doesn't like expound on that very much. Like you're right. I think Rozzi probably could have.
Well, he might still in the end. I mean, he still may come back with other witnesses or call somebody back to the stand when they get, you
right,
know.
but
But yeah,
but
there's the. Go ahead.
we've seen this throughout this case, like in the quote unquote clearing of third party suspects. The
Yeah,
lack of evidence does not preclude the fact that they weren't involved. That just means you can't prove they weren't involved. Just because you
ex-
don't have his phone from 2017 and you can't find evidence that he was on his stock ticker doesn't mean he wasn't. You can't prove that he wasn't. You
right.
can't prove that Brad Holder wasn't there. You just can't prove that he was there. You can't prove that Logan Holder wasn't there. You just can't prove that he was there.
Yeah.
So there's a difference, and there is definitely in my mind, a jumping to conclusions by the state that because there's a lack of evidence that proves that something isn't true, and I know there's like a logical theory that you can quote on that, but it just makes sense. Just because you can't prove something did happen doesn't mean you can prove it didn't happen.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so going into the jail, so he asked him the capacity. He says, "Yeah, we have capacity of 34. Usually have consistently run more than 50 or hold more than 50 prisoners." And he goes, "So have you ever held a prisoner accused of a violent crime in your jail?" Objection. McClellan objects, like immediately. Boom. And they have a little sidebar. McClellan and Rozzi and Judge Gull. And when I say sidebar, this is the sidebariest of all trials I've ever seen. Did we talk about this last night?
You did.
Yeah, it's
You did talk
crazy.
about her little sidebar system she's got going on there. Yeah, Hunter. They didn't say he got rid of the phone. It's implied that it was turned in during an upgrade of a phone, which some accounts you have to turn in the old phone to get your new phone. So we don't really know if that's what happened or not. That's what we are hearing. And as far as those confessions, we don't know. There's a lot of circumstances behind those confessions that I don't know if a lot of people know about, which I'm going to know. It's a long story, so we'll get to it, but I'm going to let Joe go ahead and finish.
Yeah, the day of court when they bring in the confessions is going to be very, very, very interesting.
Very interesting.
Because those are going to be impactful on the jury, and the defense's ability to cross on that is going to be a huge cross.
Yeah, and like I said, I had so many people when I was trying to get my true crime friends to take a look at Delphi with me and what we're seeing and what's going on. This was like months ago, 8 months ago, right? But and then a few months later, well, we're hearing he confessed. Well, yeah, but I also hear what you guys are telling me when you tell me Koberger couldn't be the guy, but you're telling me you don't want to hear about Richard Allen's case because he's got a confession in the case. But do you know the circumstances behind the confessions? And now people are starting to see what I was trying to explain to them, but they didn't want to hear. If you got to be open-minded to hear all the evidence with all the cases, but
right.
there's
Rebecca, you're right about the phone. We don't know, and neither side presented clear evidence either way.
right.
Obviously, the state insinuated that maybe because that phone was missing, that he had intentionally gotten rid of it. But then on cross, Rosie's like, so, some people trade in their phones and recycle them when they get a new phone. Some people hold on to their phones for years. And Liggett was like, yeah, that's true. That different people do different things with different phones. He didn't say that, but he acknowledged that that's true. Different people do different things with different phones. We may not ever get conclusive evidence one way or the other what happened to that phone. I mean, if I've been with the same carrier for years and years and years, and I have no doubt that if I went into one of the little local stores and said, hey, can you print me out, the last few times I've traded in a phone or bought a phone, was it a trade-in or was it a new purchase, that they should be able to tell me.
Well, when they interrogated him and arrested him in October 2022, I'm sure he was asked, do you still have the phone from 2017? And he might not remember which phone. I mean, if you got 23 damn devices in your house, who's to say one of those wasn't that phone? So I'm assuming they went through every single one of those phones and determined none of those were that particular phone from that year. I just don't know if that, I would need to like really look at that and see, because I don't know if that's correct information. I mean, I'm like, if you tell me you don't have that one phone out of all these phones you do have, now I need to know why. Well, specifically why you don't have that particular device anymore. Oh,
Well, I'll
because
tell you,
I had to trade it up or whatever. I would look for an explanation for that.
I'll tell you why, because so I have, I think, 4 or 5 old phones, but I have traded in a couple of phones over the years. And usually when I don't trade in a phone, it's because they don't really give me any value for it. Like it's been damaged,
Yeah.
the screen's cracked, or the last one, I walked into the water with it in my shorts pocket and forgot that I had it in there.
Yeah.
And it
Hunter,
was
I
one of
agree
those.
that you're citing what a defense attorney told you. Well, we got about 4 or 5 we listened to as well, and they're all in agreement. Those confessions are a problem, not for Rick Allen, but for the state, because of the circumstances that they can prove were happening during the time of those confessions. So you
Well, it
need to
may,
look at some other defense. I would recommend viewing several other defense attorneys as well, and former prosecutors, and get their takes on things as well. I don't hold one as God and listen to everything they tell me. I go and listen to a couple of different ones that I've come to respect over time in the true crime community, and get their takes as well. And not everybody's going to agree, and not every defense attorney is going to go out and fight a case in the same direction. But a lot of them agree right now those confessions are a problem, and the judge doesn't want to allow some of the circumstances behind those confessions into court because it's not going to look good for the state.
yeah, it's not going to look good for the state, but the state doesn't care. They're out to hang Rick Allen one way or the other. And his confessions, so his mental state during the confessions is going to be key to that when we get to that, right?
And let's not forget, I can't get past it. It is a known fact in this case that the guards at the prison guarding him proudly wore Odinist patches on their uniforms, and did so until they were court ordered to remove them. The warden knew they were wearing Odin patches on their uniforms. And this was during the time this man was confessing on medication in solitary confinement for a year. So, like I said, there's circumstances behind these confessions, and the confessions were all over the place. He admitted to things that didn't even happen at the crime scene. I shot the girls. I buried them. I did this. None of that happened.
Do we
So
know that? Do we know that though, Salty? Do we know? Have we seen those confessions? We hear reports
we
of
have
it and rumors of it.
they're just stated in some of the documents, like the Franks motion, the original one, and that's a 118 page document, and I have it on my desktop. I'm
Okay.
not going to go through it today, but I do this weekend. When I go live, I'm going to do probably a lengthy show, because there's a lot of things brought up at trial that absolutely go back to other things. And I want to touch on those points. Right now we're trying to get through the testimony from yesterday. So, but as I see questions and stated over and over, I kind of want to address it a little bit. So,
Yeah. And um, yeah. Oh, so one thing I heard yesterday morning standing in line outside the courthouse is that the defense filed that motion for an out-of-state appearance from Dr. Walla, and they can't find her to serve it.
so she's now missing.
Yes, according
Just
to
enough.
what I heard from
Wow.
other true crime peeps that were standing in line. They're having
Well,
trouble finding her to serve that.
they were trying to locate her, yeah, and people on the internet were trying to find her as well. And she can't be that damn hard to find. She's a Dr. Walla
Unless
of
she
Chicago.
unless she decided to go under,
Go
go
in
out of sight.
hiding or
Yeah.
being alive, or whatever. I mean, no, come on, that's just one more
No,
ridiculous
not that.
thing.
Just well,
Well, I'm
if
just saying, if she's now missing, quote unquote, that's
right.
just another weird aspect to this already strange case. Why would she just go missing and not want to get, lady? No, now I really want to talk to you.
Right.
More than I did before. Lord help us.
Let's get her and Tony Liggett in a room and just like have questions.
Yeah, y'all get your story straight so y'all can come out here and say the same thing.
All right, so
Lord.
they go to the sidebar to talk about that question about have you ever had a violent offender in your prison or in your jail. Comes back, doesn't ask it again. So apparently Judge Gull said, you can't ask that. It was actually a pretty lengthy sidebar. So then they get into he asked him a really curious question. He says, so in that search of the house, did you find in Rick Allen's master bedroom closet another 40 caliber Winchester Smith & Wesson unspent round? And Tony Liggett says, not that I'm aware of. So that is a really odd question. I wonder if they did find a second round that wasn't in that keepsake box. And
right, because allegedly the keepsake box had, okay. Well, I wonder if they did.
Right, so there's one at the scene.
We don't have it.
There's one at the keepsake box.
Yeah. I believe I have the search warrant returned, but I have to go look and make sure. It's been a minute since I looked at that stuff that I have in certain files. So I'm working on all. I got notes for myself to pull back up certain things and get together. So when I do a live, I can just say here's this and let's talk about it. But that's very interesting because if you do,
Tony Liggett was not aware of it.
That just gives me questions for the expert. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. So this next line of questioning, though, was really, really good. He says, so Betsy Blair reported that she saw a youthful man with brown poofy hair, correct? Yeah, I believe so.
You believe so?
Yeah. So he asked it again. Betsy Blair saw a youthful man with brown poofy, reported that she saw a youthful man with brown poofy hair, correct? Yes, correct. So that doesn't fit the description of Richard Allen, does it?
Not at all.
Tony Liggett says neither does the report of the three girls.
Exactly. And boom.
Rozzi
there
says,
it is.
Right! Exclamation point. Boom. Walks
and that
away.
is why they didn't want their sketches to come into the evidence, into trial, because they knew their witnesses weren't. Yeah. So he just sat there and admitted that the three witnesses that y'all have already presented that told you what they saw that day couldn't identify that Richard Allen.
The description of Richard Allen. Yes.
Right.
That was an awesome mic drop moment from Rozzi.
Did the court go silent and everybody go like that?
The court's already silent because we don't want to piss off Judge Cole.
Well, yeah, well, that's true. Don't, God, no. We'll have a sidebar forever. She'll ban everybody from the courtroom.
Well, we've been yelled at a couple times because they'll go into a sidebar and it'll turn into a lengthy sidebar and people will like start whispering between themselves and then the whispering turns a little bit louder. It should be like the bailiff actually said it yesterday. This does not open the door for you to talk.
Oh, really? Okay. Yes. Well, because we know if we walk out that door to have a conversation, we might not get back in.
Right. You won't get back in until the next break. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
I'm going to read that one more time just because it is like I've got it circled in my notes. I've got exclamation points next to it. Betsy Blair. So Betsy Blair reported that she saw a youthful man with brown poofy hair. Yes. That doesn't fit the description of Richard Allen, does it? Well, neither does the three girls description. Rozzi, right. Walks away. Oy vey. Is it common?
I was just noticing, Hunter, you do realize the state didn't want those sketches in. Their own sketches they put out to us for 5 solid years, telling us this is the guy. Both images are going to merge together and be our suspect. Those images that they continued to shove down our throats for 5 years, they decided just recently, oh, they're no count, ignore them. We're not even going to bring them into trial. Because the witnesses you're going to bring in or the defense is going to question, that's not what they saw. So
then he asks a couple of questions. Oh, is it common for locals to frequent the Monon High Bridge and trails? Objection, calls for speculation, sustained. Then he asks him something about shorter length hair, and I honestly don't remember what that question and answer was about.
Yeah, because some of these witnesses are, well, Betsy has the poofy hair, and you got Miss Sarah. They saw a little bit of hair coming out from under the hat, if that's what he was wearing. But Rick Allen always had very, very, very short hair, like military style haircuts.
Right.
So if it was Rick Allen that they saw,
Oh, yeah. So he's okay. That's why I have these exhibit numbers here, because these are referencing the state exhibits 274 and 275. So 274 and 275 are pictures from the picture album that were in their office or family room or something that show him at the show Rick Allen at the Monon High Bridge trails, being taken, in different scenes. And so the first one is it common for locals to frequent the Monon High Bridge and trails? Objection, sustained. Do you see in this picture that Rick Allen has shorter length hair? I can't really tell how long his hair is from that picture.
So they actually brought in pictures of where they took him back to the crime scene to question him.
Yes.
Okay.
No, not to question him. They were pictures. They were family album pictures. So the Allens went to the Monon High Bridge and trails on a regular basis and took pictures.
Yes, they did. Okay, I misunderstood.
Put them in a picture album. So these are from that family picture album.
Okay.
And he shows him the one that's a state exhibit. He says, doesn't it look like he's got shorter length hair here? And Liggett's like, I can't really tell how long his hair is from that. Like, really, dude?
What?
And I didn't get to see the picture, so I couldn't tell. I mean, maybe that's a reasonable response. Maybe it's not. I couldn't see the picture from where.
Well, if I was him, I would have been like, Judge Gold, could I walk up there and take a really good look? Because I can't see from where I'm sitting. Now, you're asking me if I need to go look closer. That's okay, because you're just establishing that Liggett's not a very good investigator.
Right. Okay, so then they get into the knives. Is it unusual for hunters and fishermen to have lots of knives? Wait, am I on the right page? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I have my pages out of order. Gosh darn it, we heard from Rozzie's cross. I mean, from Auger's cross. I went from page 27 to page 32. Where did page 28 go? All right.
Well, Hunter, the only proof they apparently have are the confessions in this unspent round. They have no DNA. They have no rock solid proof that he was at the crime scene. We have multiple witnesses describing different looking people. The Hoosier Harvest camera doesn't see this alleged bloody and muddy man walk past back toward where Rick Allen parked, which he would have had to pass. There's a lot of circumstantial stuff. And you can't convict. In Florida, you cannot convict on circumstantial alone. Now, I know Indiana has different rules, but I know what the judge told the jury in the very beginning of this case, and she pretty much said the same thing. If there's any elements to any of this evidence, then you have to take that for what that is. You can't just you can't just say, oh, well, there were confessions. And do you believe these confessions? And you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And right now, if they did a poor investigation and cannot prove Rick Allen was there, and if he didn't do it, then who the heck did? And you have failed your victims miserably by not doing a due diligent job in your investigation. And they have admitted they did not do that. I mean, it took 5 years and a missing tip to convict a man that for 5 years you said we're one day closer. Wait till you know what we know. Well, we're waiting to now know what. Now, Doug, is your chance to tell me what you know, because you said you were going to one day. So I called Doug Carter to the stand, and I want you to tell me all those things for 5 years you couldn't tell me that now you can, because today was the day. I'm gonna have to do a whole show on you, Doug Carter.
We've done one a little bit.
We'll have to do another one.
So now getting to the correct page. So he talks about the photograph that the girls took on the bench at Freedom Bridge right before or shortly before. The phrase is shortly before, so we don't know what that means. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 15 minutes before they ran into a guy. So The photograph at the bench on Monon High Bridge or on Freedom Bridge was taken 1 minute before the car was seen on the video. The black Ford Focus was seen on the video at the Hoosier Harvest store. So he's like at 127.
When he arrived at 127, yeah. And
Well,
Hunter,
when
I
he went
guess you're
past
right. He could have walked over toward the Mears farm and around the Hoosier Harvest store into the field to avoid that one camera that saw him drive in and park that doesn't see him leave. I don't know.
Well, that was never searched. The police never searched that. And that was kind of the point of Rozzi's cross-exam of Liggett was like, why didn't you search that area? Why didn't you search all the possible areas where the suspect could have gone?
And especially if you got somebody coming in a couple of weeks later, like Sarah saying, I saw a man muddy and bloody. Now I need to canvass this whole entire area, even more so now. I need to spread out and branch out.
Yep.
To look for a little more evidence. Because if he was muddy and bloody, walking back to the car, he could have been dripping blood somewhere. Would there be some, you know what I mean? Get on your hands and knees with a magnifying glass and look for it. Like old school.
So Rozzi's point is kind of fuzzy to me right now because he says that the photograph was taken 1 minute before that car passed the camera on the Hoosier Harvest store. And
okay, Hunter, no, that Libby's family didn't show up until her dad came to pick her up, right? And then once he began to call family, others began. Now, Sarah Carball, the witness who saw a muddy and bloody man walking, also stated she saw a group of people and there was a blonde woman who appeared to be stressed out. Who is that stressed out blonde lady at the scene? Now, that was before Libby's family would have arrived.
all right, let's get through the rest of this cross. We're almost to the end. He mentions the photograph at the bench that the 3 or 4 girls took. There's different stories, and one of them admitted eventually that yes, it was 4 girls, not 3. So there are 2 groups of girls, apparently, one group of 3 and one group of 4. I'm confused about this, and more people know about it than I do. But he said, anyway, the girls that were on the Freedom Bridge took a picture at 126. The car goes by at 127. And then he says, so how does that fit your timeline? You know? And he goes, well, you know, he went, you know, past the Hoosier Harvest store, went and backed into
now,
the
those
CPS
are the
store.
girls that were walking across the Freedom Bridge because it crosses
Yes.
over the road.
Right. Right. And so
that's where I believe it was Betsy who said she saw them up there as she passed under that bridge. She saw some girls up there walking as well.
So according to the state's timeline, he goes and he parks at CPS building, and then he walks that trail that we looked at down to the Freedom Bridge, and then they see him. So Rozzi kind of challenges that, and he says, that's your timeline, isn't it? And Tony Liggett says, well, it's on video.
Oh,
and
the video y'all left at the Hoosier Harvest store for 5 years and didn't think was necessary to collect from day one?
Right.
You got your screenshots of cars that passed by, but you didn't take the actual video. That's crime scene 101 investigation. Like, I could have learned that out the Cracker Jack box. My grandbaby is 8 and knows better. You ought to hear some of the things he's learning and comes and talks to me about. They just had a big thing at school the other day on. He come in and was telling me all about our Constitution and our constitutional rights. He hears me talking all the time. So he's very interested, but he would have known to take that video.
Yeah.
For analysis.
So Tony Liggett talks about it's on video, and he goes on for a little bit more than that. I just wrote it's on video, but he kind of expounds on that. We have this and we have this and we have this, and it's all the circumstantial evidence. Then they talk about the 43-second video and the enhanced video where Tony Liggett said, if I listen to it with headphones on, then I can hear this and this and this. And Rozzi goes, that's your interpretation, isn't it? Yes. Then they talk about the lab sending that unspent round into the ISP lab. And he said, the lab told you that they were looking for a Sig Sauer or a Smith & Wesson, didn't they? Yes. So they were looking for a gun to match to the round. Yes. I think that's pretty key phrasing right there.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's all of the cross. We take an afternoon break at 3:32. You want to
There's
catch
still
up
a
on
lot.
chat now?
There's a lot of questions still that this guy needs to answer. More directly, you know what I mean? You're dancing around things, kind of like when Maury testified in the Koberger hearing. Even I was like, man, dude, you could have done so much better. And I'm not, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I don't know all those. I know all about all the conspiracies, not a hoe for. But what matters is the evidence. But when they had one of their lead detectives on the stand a few hearings back about cell phone data, there was a lot of I don't remembers and I don't, all these. It seems to be what their standard statements would be when they don't want to answer something directly. So now I need to press you more to get a more direct answer out of you because, for investigators who don't recall, to continue to hear investigators on a witness stand say, I don't recall is bothering to me because go over your notes, that you took about this case before you come to trial. Because some of these things don't go to trial for years. Unfortunately, that's the way it's turned out lately. I don't know. There's a lot of I don't knows and can't recalls from lead investigators that we rely on to get the right person.
We rely on investigators for a lot.
Well, I mean, if I break the law, that's unacceptable, and they're going to arrest me. So when I got investigators who can't recall, that's unacceptable to me. Especially if if you can come out and write in a probable cause affidavit your key points to get that probable cause affidavit search warrant, but then you don't recall later. Like that doesn't make sense to me. And why are you allowed to get away with that when you come and question me and you think I did something? I tell you I don't recall. Now as an investigator, you're looking at me shady. You don't remember where you were? Don't remember what you were doing? They're going to question the heck out of me about that. So I get the same right. We are still in America. I still have rights.
So, this looks like, do I have the right times in here? Was that 15:32? 27. I must have the wrong time on here. So we're going to call up Holeman. Oh, we're going to call up Vido next, and then Holeman. I need to check my notes real quick. I've got to have the wrong times on here.
Yeah. I've been making a running list of all the mistakes they made during their investigation to point those out because, and it's not stuff I assumed. It's literally stuff they've come out and admitted. So, you think what you want, Rick Allen may or may not be guilty. We don't know yet until we get more evidence. Right now, it's not looking good either way, but your victims matter and you should have done right by them the entire time instead of a poor investigation from the beginning. You don't even take crucial evidence right from the crime scene at that moment. You wait until you got someone says, maybe we should have got that. Yeah, let's go back and get it. Weeks later. Unacceptable.
Branches.
Yes, that would be the branches that were placed on top of the victims. Yep. The state alleges were to cover and hide your victims. The defense, we know, alleges it was a ritualistic type thing in the woods. So either way, those items are extremely important. They contained evidence. You can pull evidence and DNA and hairs and fibers from a lot of different surfaces and things out here in the world. Those sticks were absolutely vital. Especially
they didn't just contain evidence. They were evidence.
They were evidence, but I'm saying on the items could have been more evidence, right?
Yes.
And they were laying directly on these poor little girls' bodies, and there was blood, had to be blood on those items. Now, are they just going to assume that's the girls? Yeah, probably, but we still need to make sure. So there was a lot of missteps that they did. So if this is the right guy, they are the ones responsible for losing the critical crucial evidence to prove he's that guy. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're RA guilty or RA not guilty or still waiting to find out. The police investigation, and especially once the FBI was kicked off the case, and I say that tongue in cheek because I don't know exactly what went down, but we know there was a rift because Tony Liggett said that thing with the FBI. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
You
So
can't, and badass, you really, honestly, at this point, you can't take anything Keegan Kline tells you to be the gospel. None of it. He told them the murder weapon and stuff was out in the Wabash River. They spent $1 million conducting a search and didn't find anything. Keegan also stated, when I get to prison on these CSAM charges, because I'm a pervert, I got a lot more to say about Delphi. Well, Keegan, you're in prison, so talk. Tell me what you got to say about Delphi now. You were the one communicating with these little girls from your basement, weirdo. Pretending to be somebody you weren't. So Keegan Kline is in my eyes, is scum. And I don't believe anything that comes out of that person's mouth. I won't even call him a man because he's not a man. Men don't do what he was doing.
And it was testified to in the August 1st hearings that there was about third-party suspects. There was just a little bit of testimony about Keegan Kline, and it was, he's a liar, and he lied to police many, many times. He lied so much that they spent $1 million looking in the Wabash River for that gun, and they took him on a trip from his jail cell to the cemetery because he said that he drove his dad there and waited in the car for
at the Marathon gas station. He was sitting at the Keegan said a lot of things. That's why you can't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. And how did they rule Keegan Kline out as their suspect? Because his DNA wasn't there at the scene, kind of like Richard Allen's. Allegedly, law enforcement has said he communicated with the girls the night before they went missing. And it's also allegedly that Keegan Kline said he was told by authorities his account, the Anthony Shots fake account, did communicate with those girls that morning. So we don't know. Keegan, he just needs to shut his mouth.
So we get back from afternoon break. We head out about 3:32. At 3:50, all rise. Judge Gold enters. And usually what happens is we sit down and she says, "Are we ready for the jury?" And then we sit there and wait for about 3 or 4 minutes for the jury to come in. All rise. The jury comes in, and then we sit back down, and then we pick up where we left off before break. But today, Mr. Baldwin says, I know Jerry Holeman's on the witness list for this afternoon, and I have some questions for him that the court may not approve of. So I'm wondering if we need to get that discussion out of the way before we call the jury in. And McClellan says, well, Holeman's testimony will be limited today. We're just going to limit him to the search, to executing the search warrant. And then after the tool mark expert, we're going to call him back tomorrow. And then Baldwin says, okay, that helps. So it sounds like he's got some questions for him that are going to get spicier. And I hope so, because we'll talk about in a minute, I wasn't real happy with his cross of Mr. Holeman today. But then they have a lengthy sidebar, and I mean, it's long. And then
really, I wonder what they were discussing. I'd love to be a fly on the wall during that conversation.
Right. So that was it. So at 3:50, we come back in, and at 3:58, that's when they say, okay, we can bring the jury in. And the state calls Detective David Vido with the Indiana State Police. He's been with the state police for 10 years. So that means in 2017, he'd only been with the state police for 3 years. On October 13th of 2022, he assisted with a search warrant of Richard Allen's home, and Trooper Matthew Clemens was the photographer. So they kind of worked together. He would find evidence, and Matthew Clemens would document it. with the camera. So then they introduced State's Evidence 247 to 275, which is several photographs of the evidence that they seized that day. We start with the outside of Richard Allen's home. There's pictures of the outside of the house, and then a different angle of the outside of the house showing his car, or showing a car. And then a couple of pictures of the 2016 Ford Focus, which was in the garage. So that's why I think the first picture that showed the car, which I couldn't see any of these pictures, I think they were just handouts. I don't think they were up on the monitor. And then a picture of the inside of the garage next to the car, and then another picture inside of the garage on the other side of the car that had a workbench that had knives on it. The knives were found in the sheaths on the workbench. And then the next picture is they took the knives out of the sheaths and put them on the workbench and took a picture. Then we go in the house, we see the kitchen, and the kitchen has a basket of miscellaneous items in it. So this is kind of a picture that shows that box that has a CVS name tag with Richard Allen's name on it, shows a box cutter and 2 more knives. Then they go into the office to take a picture of a plastic bag full of electric chargers, and then a picture of the phones that were found in the office. They don't list a number of phones, just say it was a bunch of phones, but does not include the phone from 2017. And then they go into the master bedroom. There's more knives in the master bedroom. So they take a picture of the knives, and then they take the knives out of the sheath and take more knives. We don't get a count of how many knives. And I can't see the picture. I don't think anybody else in the court can either. I think these are all just exhibits for the witness and the jury. Then they take a picture of the master bedroom closet. And then they show the gun cases and shoes that were in the master bedroom closet, and then boots and shoes in the master bedroom closet. And then they go to the front foyer and take a picture of the coat in the closet, which is that Carhartt coat in the foyer closet. And then the next one I missed entirely. I'm just scribbling as fast as I can. I missed State Exhibit 263. I'm sure we'll find that in somebody else's notes. Exhibit 264 is a big one. That's the picture of the Sig Sauer with 2 magazines. And then we go to State Exhibit 265. It's a close-up of the serial number of the Sig Sauer. And then 266 is another picture of the Sig Sauer with the magazine in it. And then a picture of the Sig Sauer with ammo. So I think I wrote ammo, but I think that's they took the clip out and put it next to it and took a picture from my interpretation. And then they take a picture of 40 caliber Blazer rounds. So these are Smith & Wesson rounds that are made by Blazer instead of being made by Winchester. So they're kind of making a big deal out of that, saying, well, he has this old round of this 40 caliber Smith & Wesson by Winchester, but everything he has now is made by Blazer. And we don't know how many rounds they found of the Blazer 40 cal ammo. And then they show a picture of this memory/keepsake box. And that was how they phrased it, memory or keepsake box. And then they show the contents of this keepsake box, and then they kind of spread it out and show more contents that were in this keepsake box, including that 40 caliber round, unspent 40 caliber Smith & Wesson made by Winchester.
So go ahead.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No,
I was going to think out loud about something. I was just trolling, or not trolling, but checking Twitter. So remember when I had brought up, because they claimed they found the bullet relatively quickly, right there under the ground between the girls. So when it was like, do they have DNA? Do they not? Well, we know they do. I put the video where they even say they have the DNA. They have DNA. So did they pull any DNA off that cartridge? And there's the Bardone method was created and is now used to do just that, to pull DNA off of things like a bullet, especially a bullet. So a tweet just came across Twitter that they did test that cartridge for DNA. So if there's none there, but now I also know criminals, if they're smart, are going to put on some gloves of some sort. Maybe. If they're dumb, they may not think about it, may not have any, on you at the perfect time when that crime opportunity presents itself. But I don't know what that outcome was. I'm assuming there wasn't, since they now say they don't have his DNA at the scene. If that cartridge was tested, what did they find? And if they did find DNA, whose was it if it wasn't Alan's? So that's something I'm going to be looking into here in a little while.
Right.
Because I know they're
You're talking about the one that was found in
yes, the cartridge
in the ground between the girls.
Yes. And when I do the live, I've got the information about the MVAC is what it's called. And and I know this because I deep dove the hell out of the Brian Koberger case. And everybody kept on about that touch transfer DNA and that speck of skin cell on that sheath. How can you prove it's his and all these things? Here we are trying to prove stuff in the Richard Allen case. Well, that particular method is able to pull, it's a vacuum type deal. It explains it beautifully in a couple of videos and in these articles of how it actually works. And so they're able to pull trace amounts or touch DNA from these items that you couldn't do years ago. Now, and they can now. Now, I don't know when the bullet was tested for DNA or how or what they found, but they absolutely should have tested it regardless. You don't just assume, oh, the guy probably wore a glove, no need to test that. You still need to test it. Because even like someone like Koberger could think they got all their DNA off, think they went through the correct process because they're a criminology major, but accidentally left a speck in a crevice and a snap. But they were able to pull that DNA from that sheath. And it's not a lot. It's very little. And I will agree with that with people who, in that case that I talked to, but they absolutely can do it, is my point. But I'm curious now to know what the results were of that. So if they're talking DNA and the bullet, I wonder if that expert's still on the stand, or if they move on to somebody else. I don't know that part yet. I just started checking Twitter for some updates as we were talking.
All right. So they found that round in the keepsake box in the master bedroom, and they took a picture of the back of it. And then they go to what they call the spare bedroom, where they found the photo album, including pictures of the Allens at the Monon High Bridge that go back to 2008.
2008?
Yes.
So that's several years before these murders. So he was, that's not uncommon when you live in an area like that. I border one of the largest state forests in my state. It's used all the time by many people. And my son's one of them. They go down to the trails, the horse stables, there's lakes, there's creek, you're at these places all the time if you're local. So that's not unusual to be out there a lot.
No, and I believe that 2008 predates him living in Delphi and goes back to when he lived in the Peru area.
I think you're right. As I know I have it somewhere when he actually moved over there, but not in my notes that I have with me right now.
So
what
that's the
I
case,
have now is all trial stuff.
Right. And if that's the case, if it does predate him living in Delphi, then that was a popular area for him to go. And he's been going there for,
So it wouldn't be unusual for him to all of a sudden go to the trails. It was something he did frequently.
Yes, correct.
Right. Now that can play good or bad, because that means you know your area really well. You should know if there's a camera hanging out at the Hoosier Harvest store there. You would know that. If you're planning to do something and you got sinister thoughts and you're waiting on opportunity or whatever, and you're planning it all out, you're going to know that camera exists. You should. I know how I can get to town and avoid almost every camera there is until I get to town, leading you to wonder, which way did she go when she left her house that day? I could go left, I could go right, and I'm going to end up in the same town And I promise you, both ways are rural, but one is way better to go than the other one as far as camera locations. And that's what I'll say about that.
Are you telling
Pay
on
attention.
yourself?
Pay attention, people. I mean, when I'm looking at cases, I put myself in the perpetrator's spot. You kind of have to in some cases. You kind of get in their head a little bit. It's not always fun to do that. There's sinister people out there and you don't want to stay long. It's like, well, I got to get out of there. But put yourself in their place. What would you do? Where would you go? How would you do it? Would you make this stupid mistake or would you have done this? If I'm going to try to get to town undetected, I'm going to go the route with the least amount of cameras that could possibly spot me. And I'm going to scout those locations before I ever do what I'm going to do. Unless I'm flipped out at my house one day and lost my shit and said, that's it, I'm doing it today, just gone, balls to the walls and don't care. Now that happens too.
Right.
But if you're a sinister human being or a prolific serial killer in the making, you're going to think about everything, including putting your phone on airplane mode and dropping it into a Faraday bag. Now we're hearing about that over here. Why wasn't this phone preserved? Why wasn't Libby's phone preserved better? Put into airplane mode immediately and put into a Faraday bag. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now I'm looking at that going, yes, sir. We've talked about that for a long time in Idaho 4. Koberger have done the same thing to preserve his. Now, let me ask a question. When you put a phone in airplane mode, does it save your last known location and show that as your location? That's something I got to find out today. I've been looking at that for a long time, but I kind of got sidetracked with the Delphi case, and now I'm back at it. Sorry, too many tabs open at one time.
Yeah, and when you get into this case, you can't have enough tabs open. Like you've got to have
Oh
lots
my
of
God. There's so
got to have lots of bandwidth and permanent storage in your brain. Well, temporary storage. We just need RAM. We need like a couple terabytes of RAM for this.
clear your cache, all the things. Yeah. All them defense attorneys don't like it when they get dropped tons of terabytes of stuff to look at. It's going to take me 2 years to look at this, Judge,
Yeah.
and decipher it all.
So the photo album with pictures of the Monona High Bridge area and trails go back to 2008, and then 3 specific pictures were state's evidence 275. And why they didn't separate it into 275, 76, 77, I don't know. Why would you include 3 separate pictures under one? But anyway, one of them was taken in February of 2016. Ricky posing by the tree. And then another one that may have been in March of 2016 that shows Rick Allen fishing. And then another one in April of 2016 that shows Rick Allen looking down into the water. I couldn't tell if that meant he was on the bridge because I don't think it was actually specified.
So now we know that looking at the fish is part of his habit when he's out there. Whether the river's muddy or not, I look at the river. I go to the river all the time, and if the river's up and muddy, I'm still looking. We got gators. I can still see them eyeballs. Nothing else. I'm
don't
looking.
have gators in Indiana.
No, but I'm saying if you frequent those types, people who live in big cities who do not have these types of locations anywhere near them and never ever have, don't understand the nature part of it. If you're out there and you frequent the area, you got to enjoy nature to some extent. So when I go out, and I love being outside, I'm out here now. I can't stand being cooped up in that house unless it's cold. Then I'm not going to be out here. But when I go to the river, I'm looking at nature. I'm trying to forget everything in my head. I want it all to go away and let me ground myself and find my peace. It's what you're out there for. It's what you should be out there for, unless you're planning nefarious things, but you normally would look. So that's part of his habit, is to go out there, walk around the trails, look down at the water, and look at the fish.
Yes.
And it's common for him to go down there to the area and hike around.
All right, we're getting ready to go into cross. I've got to step away for like 30 seconds.
Okay.
You got it for 30 seconds?
I do. And there's just a lot of good and you know what? Well, I'm going to save that It's a thought that I've had for a very long time. When you look at the picture of Libby crossing Libby took the photograph of Abby crossing the bridge. And we kept hearing how it was Abby's first time and she's, nervous about it and all the things that are happening, and Libby's encouraging her. But in that particular picture, she looks real relaxed walking across that bridge with her hands in her pocket. Like her hands aren't up going, for balance sake or just in case I trip, I need to catch myself. Your normal human things you would do if you're a little bit fearful. You don't just casually walk through it unless I would have my arms really close to me, like, oh my God, if I was fearful of something, or have my arms out to balance myself a little better in case I tripped. I've always wondered about that. She just seems to be casually going about it versus somebody who seemed nervous about it. And I don't know. That's one of those things that bother me and always had bothered me for a very long time. So I know that there are some lunchtime updates. Oh, it's 1:11, guys, make a wish. Okay, I had to pause for a second. There's a lot, our updates are coming out now. I think some of the lunch updates are trying to get out. Let me see. Oh, hey, All Eyes, I just ran across your tweet from 18 minutes ago. I'm looking at that now. What you got to say here? Oh, is this like the search warrant return, or what is this, girl? Let me read the tweet. If you don't mind, I'm going to read it because you got a Google Drive here. I'm going to check out too. Reports using odd phrasing from Vido's testimony about box cutter knives from Richard Allen's home being sent to state police. This is the search warrant return. Oh, thank you, girl. She got the search warrant return. I was just talking about that earlier, that we needed that. Let me see. So of this portion of it, it's a sealed cardboard box containing one black Sig Sauer P226 40 caliber handgun, and it lists a serial number. A sealed plastic bag containing one 40 cal Smith & Wesson cartridge found in wooden keepsake box. Sealed plastic bag containing a 40 cal S&W cartridge found inside the gun. Wow, they got them inside and out. That's going to be important for testing. Sealed bag paper containing one black Sig Sauer handgun case containing one trigger lock with two keys. A sealed paper bag containing a paper wrapped wooden weave box containing two audio box devices. And a Lexar compact flash 1 gigabyte memory card. So let me see. Here's what I should have been reading, I think. Let me find where she's got it. So they did take a folding silver knife, an edged knife, and a metal sheath like Joe was talking about earlier. I'm looking here, girl, to see where, does it say box cutter on the list anywhere? Or it doesn't. Is that what we're talking about? She posted the certificates of analysis with her report. Oh, good. I'm going to check you out and save that stuff to my desktop. So when I go live, I'll have all that stuff handy. I'm just looking over the return, guys, and seeing if there was anything mentioned in it about taking box cutters from his home. And remember, he worked at the CVS. So would he have had box cutters? Probably. When I managed a restaurant for years, I had box cutters. They were in my pocket. They just came home with me. You know what I mean? It was what it was. But if you could tie that to anything directly, that's a different story.
Absolutely.
It took a lot of clothing from his house, actually. I think I briefly saw this return last night, but I didn't finish reading it because I had too many tabs going on, and I probably saved it to look at. So I love to go look at All Eyes Twitter page. It's usually got some really good, informative stuff. Thank you for posting that, because I definitely wanted that.
Is Butterfly in here with us or not?
She may not be. She is working right now, so she may have had to step away for a moment. She
Gotcha.
She was listening in while we were live. What do you need?
I was going to post All Eyes Twitter on the
Oh,
feed.
yeah. Oh, that would have been good. Yeah. Let me see. What is her Twitter handle? And they can just go and look it up. Let me see. You go back to her.
There we go.
Is it all? Okay, you got it. Oh, there's Butterfly. She's on it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
All we got to do is say the name, right? Butterfly. And she's like, I'm here. What do you need?
We don't even have to say it 3 times. Butterfly.
No,
butterfly.
exactly. One time's all it takes. She's like, I'm here. What do you need? I love it. Thank you, girl.
All right. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. All I was telling them what her name was on Twitter, but we're going to be dropping the link to your Twitter feed. I do recommend you guys go check it out. Even if you don't agree with everything you hear or see, you're going to see documentation of things, and that's what you need to see.
Right. You can say the same thing about ours, even if you
Exactly.
don't.
And that's it. You may not agree with what we're saying and may not agree with the discussions or our take on it, but we try to we're discussing what comes out of documents. At least I am, Joe is, and most of us, that's where a lot of these conversations are coming from. And I think people don't realize that sometimes. They think we're speculating and yeah, we do speculate and theorize, but that's normal and natural. But it's based on things in these documents that we know existed and didn't exist. So there's the difference between Idaho 4 and Delphi right there. All the things talked about in Idaho 4 conspiracies were never proven, not even in court documents as of yet, not even by the defense attorney in that case, or brought up at all. So it was vastly, and to this day, I'm still floored by all of the people who immediately jumped behind Kohberger. He needs all his rights protected, everything by the book. He can't be the guy. He looks normal. Rick Allen was a normal looking guy that worked at the CVS, now arrested a month before Brian Kohberger had every right known to man stomped on. And here he is with shoddy evidence trying to convict him. The internet would be on fire if this was Brian Kohberger. And that kind of makes me mad. I'm sorry. I think people know that by now. No damn tunnels over here to look at, people.
All right. So let's get into OJ Cross of Trooper Vido. I think so. She asked him originally, what should I call you? He's a detective, but I think he said you can call me Trooper Vido. Maybe he said detective. I don't know. Anyway, Mr. Vido. I'm going to call him Mr. Vido, Detective Vido. It's important to conduct a search professionally. That's her opening statement. And he just sits there for a couple seconds and he goes, was that a question? So it starts off on the wrong foot, like immediately. It's important to conduct it. Would you agree with me that it's important to conduct a search professionally? Yes, of course. So let's look at States Exhibits 269 to 273. So that's the memory/keepsake box. She wants to bring this up first. Is it unprofessional to hold a piece of evidence with your hand to photograph it? Wow, we're getting close to the end. Where did I skip ahead again? Surely I didn't skip ahead again because we got.
I don't know. Yeah, calm down, chat. Y'all be respectful of one another. We don't have to agree on everything. You just don't have to go at the people that you don't, and I'm sorry if you get timed out at other places. I am probably the creator. I don't like doing that. I welcome other opinions, but we can do it respectfully. I saw this happen in Idaho 4 case, and it was horrible. I felt differently than other people, and I was treated like shit. So I don't like doing that to people who think different than me in this case, because I have to apply the same rules I'm going to apply here. I'm going to apply to every case I follow. You won't find me following one case forever. That's not true crime to me. There are many, many cases, and my next case is going to be Crystal Rogers. I'm already on that case, and I've been on it for 8 years. So just be nice to each other. You don't even got to respect one another. Just don't interact. Just say what you got to say, but there's a way to do this without being so combative to each other, I think. Maybe I'm just wishful thinking.
No, we're not going to put up with that. I'll put a stop to that pretty fast.
I mean, people are going to disagree, and that's just the way it is.
Right. No,
I'm not in a habit
love.
of getting rid of the ones who disagree with me.
Nope.
I'm
No,
just
no,
not.
no, no. I love having other opinions come in and us thinking it through and talking it through in a respectful way. But
Right. And Hunter, I think, and this is just me looking outside in, watching chat. It feels like you're stating a lot of things as facts that aren't really facts, no more than what we are. Some of the things we talk about, and what we are trying to talk about are facts that are coming out. But there's things you're saying that may not be a fact. So you need to, understand people are like, that's not true because they have heard different or they've seen documentation of different. So that's where that's coming from, I think.
yeah, I mean, the truth will come out eventually. But in the meantime, when we have our opinions, we can't state opinions as facts, or we shouldn't anyway. I mean, lots of people do it all the time, and I don't pay a whole lot of attention to them because if you don't have an open mind and you aren't willing to discuss things that are not facts, then you're
Mhm.
not going to learn anything. I'm about learning. I'm
Right.
about learning from other people.
And I can agree that right now, in literally from what we're seeing, the state has circumstantial evidence against Richard Allen. Nothing concrete or factual yet, not even DNA. And it's so unusual not to have a DNA at the scene. Can it be done? I suppose so, because somebody we know may have gotten away with that almost. But I mean, it's just the questions that are being asked are coming from the documents,
Well,
and
let's read back through Sheriff Liggett's testimony on cross-examination, where Rozzi asked him, was it possible that another man could have been beside the girls on the down the hill video that wasn't the same man that was shown on the video? And Liggett says, I don't think so. And Rozzi says, it's not humanly possible. I don't think so. So here is a man that just says that it's not humanly possible for there to be two human beings on near the girls, by the girls, on the bridge, by the trails, close enough to say that. He says it's not humanly possible, which we all know is absurd. And hopefully the jury knows that too. So here's a guy that is defying logic. And immediately after that, Rozzi asks this guy who has this narrative he wants to to show the jury, for the jury to hear. He has this narrative, he has his interpretation of what he hears on the video. That's what he wants the jury to hear. Immediately after that, Rozzi says, so there was no DNA at the scene tying Richard Allen to the scene. No. There were lots of there's lots of electronic evidence in this case. Correct? Yes. But there's no digital evidence of Richard Allen being tied to the crime, is there? No. So this is the guy that has a narrative, and he's admitting there's no DNA, there's no electronic evidence, and there's no we won't get into time of death. That's it. But there's no DNA, and no clothing of Libby and Abby's or anything of Abby and Libby's was found at his house or in his car tying him to the crimes. Was there? No. So this is a guy that has a narrative that he's that he and Nick McClelland want to put out to the jury, and he's admitting there's no hard physical evidence. The only thing they have is that unspent round and the tool mark expert that we heard today. So it'll be interesting when those reports start coming out about that. I'm very interested in hearing that.
Yeah. And the fact that we can't see some of these exhibits, it's like the secrecy that's gone on. It just seems so odd. And relying on, you know, certain members of the press being allowed to view those exhibits at the end of the day. And they're not even doing a really good job at coming out and talking about those exhibits they saw at the end of the day for that 15 minutes they were allowed to view them. Like, they come out and report what's being testified to, like a lot of people are doing, but they're not coming out and telling me what they saw at the end of the day in those exhibits. And I don't watch mainstream media. I don't watch much news at all. I used to years ago, before politics and the pandemic. I got really turned off during all that time period. Fake this, fake that, fake media, fake everything. Here we are relying on that fake media to report facts as we know them, or as they see them. And it's just aggravating that they're not even coming out at the end. And I get it. They can't take photographs of what they're viewing at the end of the day or video of it. They can just come out and give us their interpretation of what they saw, down to recreating a confession they saw. I don't like that. Don't come out here and have a reporter. What'd y'all use to recreate that with? And did you go off memory? You couldn't take a picture of exactly what it looked like. But now here you are presenting me with an image you recreated of an image you saw with your eyes. Now, how many of y'all saw the same thing? Kind of like bridge guide descriptions, kind of like AI generated imagery. I don't like AI either. If we accept all that's fake in the world, we're living in a fake world. Everything is fake now. I don't like AI. What's its purpose? Go to school and learn if you want to know how to speak correctly. Type a good sentence or a good paragraph or a good story. Go to school. Don't rely on some AR wizardry to type it all out for you. It's crazy. Sorry, that's got off on the sidetrack there.
There are so many side trails on this. There are so many side trails we can go down. All right.
Yeah, I can't have fake in a criminal case when someone's life's on the line, especially for what they're accused of doing to those girls didn't deserve that in that woods that day. And from where the details of what they went through, especially in those last 5 to 10 minutes, is horrific. So whoever did that to them in those woods absolutely deserves to spend beyond the rest of their life in a prison. I'm in Florida. We have the death penalty, and I thought it was normal all my life. So I grew up and realized, oh, people don't like that. Well, we still have it in Florida. Don't we, Stephon Stearns?
We actually, I think, technically have the death penalty in Indiana, I think, but it hasn't been used in quite a while.
Wow. We don't mind using it in Florida. We use it all the time.
All right. So hold on a second. I gotta. Yeah, all eyes. That's I know who that was.
That's I was just reading that. Yeah, that's uncalled for.
And it's not just uncalled for, it's despicable. I don't
It
care
is.
if you believe, even if you believe like the worst possible thing that maybe she was involved in it somehow, but that's not even what that was about. That was about somebody spreading rumors about her, saying that she wasn't married to him anymore, type of bull crap. And
that she had filed for divorce and things like that.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you guys are on Twitter and you're familiar with Twitter and you're familiar with BTK, his daughter is on Twitter. She tweets all the time. Well, she goes under the radar for a few months here and there, and then she comes back with a little vengeance, tweeting again. These families that have lived real life, grew up in a home with a serial killer as their father, as their husband, will tell you, whether it's true or not. Look at Rex Holeman. Okay, this man, 15 years of serial killing, and the whole time was married with children in the home where he was cutting women up in the basement, and nobody knew, according to them. BTK's daughter, they never had any indication that he was up to anything nefarious in any kind of way, according to them. So for people to go after Kathy Allen because she was married to the man is wrong. It's not, we shouldn't be as a society, be it where we're doing stuff like that. But I know people are out there doing it, and it's horrible.
And that's honestly the part of, now recently starting my own YouTube channel and a Twitter account and it being in the true crime realm just like makes me so leery, because things can
it
go.
Should, Joe.
Yeah,
and I'll be honest with you, from what I saw happen to people, not only in Idaho 4, but it happened in this case. People wanting you to join their discords on purpose because they wanted you to, because they're going to try to snatch things and get information on you. No, sir. And somebody made a comment very early on, why aren't you showing your face? I'm going to tell you why. I have a family. What I look like, where I live specifically, is really no one's business. And I don't do it because I'm ashamed of anything. I do it because I do have family who do not care about what I'm doing right here with you guys right now. They are no part of it whatsoever. They don't even know the depth of what I discuss. So to protect them in the long run, there's reasons why we do it. And I hate to say that because I saw it with my own eyes in Idaho 4 and in Delphi case. People turning on each other and going after Sebastian Rogers, that poor child, in his case, doxing people left and right on the YouTube because they didn't like what that creator said. Now we're going to go look up their whole entire record and dox the shit out of them.
Right. And creators going to jail, going to court.
Yeah, ending up in court documents. I don't want to be in nobody's court documents.
No, that's ridiculous. So let's get into these court documents.
Okay, yeah, let's read their court.
Remember where we were. So I was in the right place. I'm on page 31 out of 33. And 33 is actually a full page. No, I have 35. Okay, so I'm in the right place. So OJ Cross of Detective Vido. It's important to conduct a search professionally, isn't it? No, she doesn't say isn't it. She just says it's important to conduct a case. He says, is there a question there? So she rephrases it as a question. Then they start talking about the pictures of what's in the memory box. And she goes, is it unprofessional to hold a piece of evidence with your hand to photograph it? And he's like, I'm not sure I know what you mean. And she just goes, is it professional? He says, yeah, it is. It's professional. Is it common? No. And then, okay, then these are the questions when I jumped ahead a few pages. So this is actually OJ's Cross of Vido. This isn't back at Liggett. So is it common for locals to frequent the Monon High Bridge trails? Objection, speculation, sustained. Looking at the pictures of Richard Allen in Exhibit 275, and there are the 3 pictures of him in Exhibit 275. Does he have shorter length hair? I'm not sure I can tell that. So then she gets into the knives. Is it unusual for hunters and fishermen to have lots of knives? Not really.
Oh, sorry.
No, what's your thought?
Damn. Nothing. I'm reading a tweet.
Oh, okay.
I want to read it. I want to share it. So this is a report coming from Kyla Russell on Twitter, Wish News 8. And it says the Toolmark firearm expert was called to testify. She testified to concluding a pistol taken from Richard Allen's home cycled the cartridge found near the crime scene in 2017. But it's important to note the cartridge found at the scene had been cycled through a firearm, but the cartridge she tested was a fired bullet.
That's difficult for me to wrap my head around. That doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Okay. Oh, look, all eyes. I see you done commented on her stuff. Okay. I just now saw this tweet. So all eyes, I'm going to say what you said. Okay. The examiner basing her conclusion on Richard Allen's gun by comparing a fired test round to an unspent cartridge. Like, I agree. I mean, and Joe, I think, agrees as well. That's a huge difference. You can't get an accurate conclusion from that test, right?
No, and that actually makes sense now, or helps me make sense better of a question that OJ ends this cross with, or maybe it was Baldwin of his cross of Holeman. But I think we're gonna talk a little bit about that.
Okay, good.
I think OJ like sets the stage for them to talk about it today after on cross of that Toolmark expert.
Because when you fire the gun, the pins, everything that leaves the marks on the bullet. When you eject, that's a different situation.
Right.
They're not going to have the same markings.
A spent casing ejected from a firearm has different physical characteristics than an unspent round that's just cycled through the weapon.
Now, doesn't this make sense as to why they didn't want Tobin to come in, being a meteorologist, to explain the difference of the way the metal would react? Lord. Yep. Wow. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna need. Yeah, we're gonna have to hear more about that. This specific testimony.
I
this
think
evening.
O'Shea mentions it towards the end here of this cross. So she talks about
Okay.
knives. Is it unusual for hunters and fishermen to have knives? No. She says, is it usual? Is it common for hunters and fishermen to have lots of knives? Sure. But it's not, and it's not unusual for people to have box cutters. Sure. And people can hold on to their old phones for some time. Sure. So kind of saying that just because you found those doesn't mean it's evidence of any type of guilt. April 2019, he was assigned full-time to work on the investigation. So that date, April 2019, what kind of significance does that have and the relationship between the FBI and the Carroll County Sheriff's Office?
The only way to prove that ejected bullet came from his gun, you need to eject another bullet, and then you compare the two.
Right.
That's all you got. That's the only way you can do it.
Yeah. Cycled unspent round.
Right. So then you compare to see, do they have the same identifying markers? That's how they determine this bullet was fired from said gun when they're doing ballistic testings. They compare the bullet they found to the bullet they shoot. If they have the same exact markings, and that's how they determine it came from that particular gun. So you're going to do the same process with an unspent round. So a fired round is going to have different markings than an unspent. How can you determine that came from that gun? You can't. And I'm not an expert. I'm just, in my mind, that's what I'm thinking. You shouldn't be able to.
Hopefully we hear on cross today. I wonder who is crossing. I would guess it's either going to be OJ or it's going to be Rozzi. I don't think Baldwin's going to cross the tool mark expert because he is more of a folksy, general feeling testimony type of attorney, whereas Rozzi is a little more technically acute, and OJ is even more technically acute. Now her witness examination skills, especially cross-examination skills, are not to the level of Rozzi's and Baldwin's, but her technical knowledge is really, really good. Like, she understands things. She's super sharp. She's super smart. All right, so let's get through the rest of this cross, and this is OJ of Vido. So in April 2019, you were assigned full-time to work on the investigation. April 2019 is a key time frame for me because of that relationship between the Carroll County Sheriff's Office and the FBI. That Carhartt coat that was found in Rick Allen's front foyer closet was tested. Was there anything anything found on that coat from the testing that linked Richard Allen to Abby Williams and Liberty German's death? No. Nothing on that Carhartt coat in his closet tested, linked him to the scene, to the crime. Did anything tested in the car link him to the murders? No. And none of the knives that were collected in his house were linked to the murders of Liberty and Abby. No. Did you ever find the missing clothes from the scene during your search warrant? No. So, and that ends the cross. And there were no jury questions at all.
Well, I mean, to be fair and to be honest, are you going to keep your weapons and your things, your murder kit, readily available if you're a serial killer, maybe like Rex Sherman? But generally, it wouldn't be unusual for a suspect to get rid of things, especially if it like that. So they allegedly didn't find any evidence in Koberger's case in his vehicle or home or anything like that. And I take that all with a grain of salt. I do that now. We're hearing they haven't found anything. We're at trial now with this case. And we had heard and knew that allegedly they didn't find anything to connect him. And so now we're seeing that they really, really didn't, or because it would be brought out in court. They're literally saying, no, we didn't find anything.
Right. Except the knife sheath.
Right. Yeah. I mean, are you going to, chances are, now they say some will keep those because, yes, there are serial killers that have their special weapon and they never get rid of it. They couldn't part with it if they tried. But if you're a random killer and you just, oh shit, what did I just do? Are you going to try to get rid of that weapon? Yeah, I would.
Right.
So,
and usually the way that people get caught is by doing something stupid, like throwing it away. Like, look at Stephen Stearns. I mean, he took the crap
To the dumpster, right? Your
to
own
the dumpster
dumpster.
at their apartment complex or townhouses or
Or
whatever. Yeah.
he didn't think to go to the neighbor's house and put it in their garbage.
Right. But think about this. If it had taken 5 years for them to act on this lead that they got and to check it out, all of that evidence would have been gone, long gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
Even if
they acted on the lead immediately, and
right.
they were able to find the evidence immediately, and they were able to find her body immediately
And
because
yeah, and they were convinced they were going to find some belongings of the girls there as well, and the weapon, or at least the gun that they thought this bullet came from. But that's all they appear to have rather to get their probable cause search warrant. He placed himself there wearing similar clothing to our suspect that we've talked about for 5 years. We have a bullet. We need to see if he's got any guns that match this kind of bullet. And we think he may have the belongings of the girls in this home, and probably still has the murder weapon. That's all they use for probable cause. And I guess probable causes can be circumstantial and don't need a ton of evidence like you need at trial. But it's a really weak PCA from all the PCAs I've read over the years. You know what I mean?
It is. And all of the evidence in that is weak and circumstantial and or subjective. So they talk about the tool mark in the PCA, and they say in that sentence, and I've mentioned this like 200 times already, but it's subjective evidence. It's not absolute. It's not as certain. So there's uncertainty in every single investigative tool and every single analysis. There is a level of uncertainty. When you're talking about some DNA evidence, it's 1 in 3 billion. If you're talking about other DNA evidence, it's 1 in 200 million. If you're talking about ballistics of spent rounds, the uncertainty level in that is a lot lower than the uncertainty level of tool mark evidence. And every time I see a trial like this, I want the attorneys on whichever side is challenging the evidence to say, what is the uncertainty level that matches that exactly? Is it 1 in 100 guns could have created those scratches? Is it 1 in 1,000? Is it 1 in 1,000,000? What is the uncertainty level? And I guarantee you nobody crossed her on that today. I guarantee you. And it's just so frustrating because there are uncertainty levels and they are quantifiable uncertainty levels in every single piece of evidence. And I want that expert for that piece of evidence to quantify the uncertainty for me.
Yeah. Because the uncertainty is not, good enough when you're trying to do what you're doing here in this trial, in any trial. It's, and if Indiana gets away with, like, no shade to Indiana as a whole, but if you allow these types of things to happen, and we know there's been issues in the past with other investigations and other, like, dueling and things, it's time to reevaluate what you're doing there, who you got doing it there, and really look at things hard, because I mean, they have to know right now. And I feel like that if you look at Lesenby, he always appears to have this, this look on his face like, and one day they're going to find out. One day they're going to find out that we didn't do that, what they're all thinking we did, like as far as getting DNA and testing and all the things. So I don't know.
All right. So we're getting ready to go into the last witness of the day yesterday, which is Lieutenant Jerry Holeman of the Indiana State Police. And he so before I recognized him in all of these court proceedings, I was like, who is this guy? He seems like a politician. I would not be surprised if someday he runs for lieutenant governor or state senator, maybe even congressman. He looks and acts like a politician, and a politician from North Central Indiana. But he is a lieutenant with Indiana State Police. He has been for 23 years. He's the Area 1 Incident Commander, which means he responds to major crimes in Area 1, which is like northwest central Indiana, Tippecanoe County, Carroll County, Cass County. I think he said Howard, maybe Jasper County. And he was the supervisor of the execution of the search warrant on Richard Allen's home on October 13th of 2022. Let me pull up my notes online so I don't have to keep looking down. Here we go. So then this is what I tweeted out yesterday. This is the tweet that is getting so much run on X. So the very first thing they did when they got on scene was they did a walkthrough with a photographer, with an ISP photographer, taking pictures of the outside of the house and the property and taking pictures of the inside of the house so that they could memorialize how it was before they executed their search warrant. And that way, if there's any damage done during the search warrant, and it's funny that he worded it this way. He said, well, we take those pictures so in case there's any damage done, it can be repaired. But that's not the only reason you take pictures of it. You're also documenting a scene, a possible scene of evidentiary value. But the spin that they took was...
yeah, go ahead.
The spin they took was so apparently Rick Allen came and sat in the car with him while the search warrant's going on. They wouldn't let him in the house and they wouldn't let Kathy in the house. And she had to go to the bathroom. So she left in the car to go to her place of work. So she went to work to go use the bathroom and probably just stay away from the whole thing.
And see, it was rumored they both left.
No, he sat in the car. According to Holeman, he sat in the car with Jerry.
Okay,
Holeman.
so according to law enforcement, Rick Allen did not get in the car with his wife and drive away. He stayed at the scene in the car with him.
Yes.
Duly noted. Thank you. Clearing up the rumor mill.
And while he was sitting in the car, he told Rick about their policy about property damage. If any of the property gets damaged, if they have to rip up drywall or carpeting or whatever property damage happens, there's a document that you can fill out of some kind and file it with the state police to file for property damages to be restored to you. At that time, he says that Rick Allen said, it doesn't matter, it's over.
Yeah. I saw that report this morning, I think.
You didn't see my tweet yesterday? It was all over the news.
Look, there's so many tweets and different things. I was really focusing on getting all my testimony notes together and trying to organize stuff on my computer with all that. So I was like in and out, but then I started seeing your tweets last night. I was like, why didn't I see this yesterday? So I need to unfollow, like I do on YouTube. Go and unfollow all the weirdos you don't want to be forgot you were following or subbing to, and you'll get your notifications on who matters to you. So I got to do the same thing at Twitter. I got to go.
I'm starting to get that way on YouTube.
I got to go get notifications off. Yeah, if you get rid of the notifications you don't want anymore, you'll start getting the ones you do want. So that's how you fix that problem on the YouTube, people. I hear so many creators, well, I don't know why y'all aren't getting your notifications. Probably because you got 1,000 turned on and you don't realize it at some point, especially if you're following certain cases or you sub up to somebody and then realize later, I'm not really down with them, but you forget to unsub, you're still getting notifications. And if you're lazy like me or I'm in the middle of other things, you're not attending to it right away. So I've really had to sit down and go through my subscription list and unsubscribe. And then I started getting notifications again on the ones that mattered to me the most.
Well, hold on. Yeah.
Go ahead.
He says, so put Rick Allen on a lie detector test and ask him if he said that. Well, we're in trial now, so it's way too late, but he's got a defense team that can challenge and even impeach this witness given the opportunity. So they have an opportunity to challenge this statement that Lieutenant Jerry Holeman made on the stand. And believe me, they're not shy about impeaching witnesses at all. So
not at all. And
so if Rick Allen told them, I never said that, then they're going to find a way to impeach him and bring that in without saying Rick Allen says I didn't say that. They're going to find a way to, well, do you have proof of that? Did you record that? You know, ask them questions to try and challenge that statement. But here's go ahead.
And no, I was just going to answer that question there. No, In Florida, that's not allowed. Yeah, I think it's that way across the board. A lie detectors test, polygraph test are inadmissible in court. They are literally what they call an investigative tool, kind of like sketches.
I see what you did there.
You like that? I do that a lot.
So he says it once. And then Holeman says, well, Kathy got in the car and went to work because she had to pee. I don't think he said it that way. He had to go to the bathroom, whatever. And Holeman says, well, she's got the car and you can't go anywhere. I'm willing to take you over to the works. Oh, no. Before that. Okay. So Rick Ellen asks him, and I didn't put this in my notes, dang it. Probably because I was scribbling so fast. So, says about the property damage. It doesn't matter. It's over. Then he asks because Kathy went away and he doesn't know where she's at. He goes, did you guys detain her? Did you arrest her? Which is an interesting question. And Holeman says, no, we didn't arrest her. She went to work because she had to go to the bathroom. So I'm kind of confused about where was Rick and where was Kathy when the search warrant was executed. Like, was she in a back bedroom and he answered the door and they said, you have to get out immediately. And then they went in and then they took her out. And so they were kind of separated immediately. You know, that's a typical thing that law enforcement does.
Yeah, I was
They
about
will
to say
separate
that's
people.
right. It wouldn't have been uncommon to separate them, but that, like, especially if you're going to question them at any point, but you're not there to really question them. I mean, you could start to, and they could say, hey, well, I need a lawyer. You're searching my house. I'd be like, I'm not even talking to you right now because right now you're searching my home. I think I need to get an attorney, no matter if I'm guilty or innocent, especially. And if I'm innocent, all the more reason I'm not going to say another word. I need to call an attorney right here, right now.
Right.
If I don't
And
have no money, just arrest me now so I can get me to court, so I can get me with a little defense with them court appointed attorneys. I need something.
This is a prime example of exactly that, because on my tweet yesterday, when I said, he said, it doesn't matter, it's over, quote unquote. There are people that believe that that's an indication of guilt. And there are people that believe that there's an explanation for that. And we'll hear on cross what the defense's explanation for that is. But either way, if he hadn't have said anything, it wouldn't be an issue and it wouldn't have come into court.
Yeah.
Just keep your mouth shut. Just don't say anything and it can't be used against you.
Well, we know from history, people don't do that. People talk when they shouldn't, and especially, even the ones that are innocent and the ones that are guilty, they say things they shouldn't be saying, and it's almost like now if you clam up and don't talk, people talk about you for that, and if you do talk, you're talked about for that. And we've all been told, especially those of us who are in the true crime community and listen to defense attorneys, they're going to tell you, don't say a word, no matter what you did or didn't do, don't say a word, get an attorney. So, I don't know. Was it nervous energy talking? Where's my wife? Did y'all arrest her? She didn't, is he
It
thinking
sounds a
she
little
didn't
bit
do
like panic.
anything?
It sounds a little like panic to me,
Well,
honestly.
that's Holeman's interpretation that's coming across on the stand. So
Right,
it could have been panic. It could have been panic. Oh, you guys are here. You're all of a sudden, you're questioning me. Now you're at my house searching it. Where's my wife? Did you arrest her? She didn't do anything. What's going on here? So I'm going to be a little apprehensive and I'm going to be a little nervous energy. And I'm going to be like, no, you need to tell me what's going on right now. Where's my family member at? Where'd they go? So I don't, that's circumstantial talk to me.
Yeah, I'm
especially
going
with
to give a
Holeman.
little foreshadowing because we'll find out on cross that just a few hours earlier was his interview at the police station where he was basically accused of this. Like, they made it very clear that they believe that he's Bridge Guy and that he did this thing. So just a few hours before this. So imagine you're called down to the police station, you go through this interview, and it's very, very clear that they're keying in on you as a suspect that did this. And then you go back to your house, and a couple hours later after that interview, they're knocking on your door and executing a search warrant with, how many police officers? Probably 8 to 10, probably, maybe something like that. And it's just like, it's overwhelming. And we don't know, based on this excited utterance, which I use that term very loosely. It's not literally an excited utterance, but it's obviously made out of some feeling of emotion, and we don't know
Joe,
what that emotion is.
check over chat for a second. What are you guys? Who's somebody threatening to dox somebody and grab their IP address? Look badass. They're saying you're like like the number one troll, and people heard timing you out, blocking you left and right. Joe, this is your channel, not mine. So I'm not going to address this because it won't turn out pretty.
No. What do you think?
I mean, if this is going over here to make trouble, you need to go. Like, for real, if you want to be a part of the conversation, have a legit conversation, you're welcome. But if you're here just to push buttons and troll, then why be here? But when y'all are all now having conversations about doxing and stuff, I don't want no part of that stuff.
Nope, it's not going to happen. Trying to figure out. Yeah. It's like freaking babysitting.
I know, it's badass American is the one making the comments and they're talking to, so.
Right, as an instigator?
Yeah.
All right, I can't follow up with that.
Oh, you can't see chat?
I can, yes, but I can't go back and look through. I can go back, but it'll take me like 20 minutes.
That's okay. I'm keeping an eye on it, so.
All right, problem solved. Hopefully.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I know Butterfly's working, but she's probably listening.
Right. It's all good. I dealt with it.
Okay, cool.
All right. So he says it once, and then he wants to know where Kathy is. Did you arrest her? No, we didn't arrest her. She went to work to go use the bathroom. I'm worried about her. Do you want me to take you over to where she's at so you can check? And then supposedly he says it again. It doesn't matter. It's over. And that was the bomb drop.
Well, I mean, if you're questioning me a few hours earlier and you're telling me you think I'm the bridge guy and now you're searching my house, yeah, my life's over right now until I have felt that way in life when certain things happen. I don't know. I mean, y'all are getting ready to really pin this on me, it looks like. Could it be that? Could it legit be, oh shit, I'm finally caught after 5 years? Yes, sir, it could be. But it could also be, what the hell's happening here? And it's all over with. My whole life's going to be ruined now, which wouldn't have been far from the truth, considering what we've seen. But, I mean, it's Holeman's interpretation. Hearsay. And it's not, I mean, if he said it, he said it. But that's hearsay. Did Holeman write that down? Did he record that interaction? Was it being recorded, or was it recorded over later? I need the context behind. There's more, you know what I'm saying? That to me is still just circumstantial evidence, because I could take that 2 ways.
Right. So let's see how Baldwin deals with all of those questions.
Okay. Oh yeah, let's do.
So the next thing they do, so they get past that emotional utterance, I'll put it, and he walks all the way across the room. So McClelland says, do you mind getting State's Exhibit 276? He walks across the room, pulls out a box. It's a box with a handgun in it. And the box is sealed. It's got multiple seal tapes on it. I can't see how many, but it's been sealed and unsealed multiple times. It's currently resealed with Holeman's initials on it. And so he unseals it again. He opens the box, and the jury leans forward so they can see him opening the box with the gun in it. And McClelland says, do you mind clearing that gun for safety to make sure that it's safe? He does. He racks it 2 or 3 times, and it's audible throughout the courtroom. It echoes throughout the courtroom. Click, 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 click as he racks it. And then he holds it up with 2 fingers in front of him, jury, look at this. And this brings me back to the Hannah Gutierrez trial, because there was a ballistics expert on there that was called by the defense that very unsafely handled weapons in the courtroom. And at one point he actually almost kind of pointed it, over his shoulder at the judge. And then the prosecution objects and says this guy is not handling this safely, and they have a deal. But so as he's holding it out in front of him, even though it's been cleared for safety, it's still pointing directly at the bailiff who's seated to the left of the judge. I'm like, this is
I remember that.
this is a lieutenant in the Indiana State Police, and he's got a weapon pointed at another human being. That's like one of the primary rules of gun safety is you always treat it as if it's loaded. Even if you believe you just cleared it, you always treat it as if it's loaded, and you never point it at anything that you don't intend to shoot.
Exactly. And that's how we were raised up in the woods out here where deer hunters thrive. You don't point that weapon at nobody ever. My daddy would have a cow. Did I teach you better? You know better. You don't point that weapon anywhere toward a human, loaded or unloaded. It's common sense, right? Well, for most people, especially an expert.
Right. Yes. So he's been with ISP for what, 23 years? Yeah, 23 years. He's been with ISP. So he went through the academy, and he's done multiple trainings since then, and he's probably had to draw and fire. He's had to do firearms testing and training. He knows all the rules, and those are primary fundamental rules for everybody, but especially for a law enforcement officer. I was baffled.
Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me, honestly.
So that was actually it. Like, Holeman showing that gun to the jury was the last of the direct examination.
So that was his second time testifying so far.
No,
I wonder how many times.
That was
He wasn't already on the stand before?
I haven't been there every day, so I don't know. Maybe he was.
I thought he was called earlier. I have to go back and check.
He might have been, because that's actually kind of McClelland's strategy here, is he doesn't want any one particular witness on the stand for hours on end, because that opens the door for, on cross-examination, for a whole lot of things from the defense. So he's telling this story, he's giving the state's case in bits and pieces. He's doing it, an hour at a time at the most.
Yeah, and you lay it out. So Holeman can actually testify about many different things involving the case, not just one particular area.
Right, and supposedly he is getting on the stand after the toolmark expert today to do more to give more testimony.
Yeah, putting him. Where's Doug Carter? We want him up there too.
Yeah. I want Doug Carter and Tobe Lesenby on the stand.
But yeah, they deserve to get. Look out, Holeman, you the fall guy, dude. You just didn't know it all that time. Oh Lord.
All right, so at 4:37 p.m., and we're getting really close to the end because we were out by 5. So at 4:37, Baldwin begins his cross. He said, "Did you tape the conversations with Rick Allen at the execution of the search warrant?" "No, I did not." "Did Rick Allen's demeanor change after that interview at the police station and during the execution of the search warrant?" And there was a little bit of a back and forth about demeanor, but basically it boiled down to, yes, a person who has been in a police interrogation and is being a search warrant, their demeanor can change, and usually does change. Had he been accused of murder? Yes. And then page 35. All right, one more page. Hold on. I want to pull up the digital copy of it here. Here we go.
Yeah, Hunter, isn't that a shame that they allowed their suspect to hide in plain sight for 5 straight years?
All right, page 35, the very last of the last. He asked the same question that OJ asked of Vido. Can a bullet be damaged by photography? Which is a weird way to phrase it, because I would have phrased it, can a bullet be damaged during photographing it for evidentiary purposes? And obviously the answer is yes, it can be. But he said, can it be damaged by photography? And Holeman says, if there's a DNA transfer, yes. And so he kind of acknowledges that if you hold up a piece of evidence with your hand, then it can be compromised, but that's not the way they phrased it. And that's not quite the answer. So I think Holeman was kind of reading into Baldwin's question as to the intent of the question, but they didn't really get into it. He just said, if there's a DNA transfer, yes. It was like, that's not the question that was asked, but that's kind of the correct answer in summarizing that evidence can be compromised during photographing it and collecting it and blah, blah, blah. But that was just a weird ending question to the day. That was the very last question of the day. There wasn't any redirect. There weren't any jury questions, although juror number, I think it was 12, he was the last guy on the bottom left row. She said, are there any questions? And he raised his hand, and they passed it down the line, and they gave it to her, and she said, no, we can't ask that question. And that was it. That was the end of a crazy day.
So I guess someone found some information, and there is remember the tip said Richard Allen Whiteman. So there apparently is a Mr. Whiteman in the area. And do you know he drove a 2014 Ford Focus?
What?
Where's
that coming from? Where's that coming from? Because, okay, well, that's very relevant.
Hang on, I'm going to send it to you.
Yeah, send
Twitter.
it to me. But
it's on Twitter.
That's
R&M Productions. It's a post by Kara Winnicky, and I haven't reviewed it yet because I don't want to play it while I got my mic on my phone for you guys to hear. But apparently they have found some document. It come from wishtv.com. It looks like. Let me click it. Hold on. Let me send this link over to you. I'm getting it right now. I'll be right there with it. I'll drop it in the Discord for you.
All right. But as I was saying, that's very, very relevant because Kathy Shank, and I don't know why you keep saying Kathy S. Is there a reason for that? Should I not be saying her full name?
No, I don't care, but because on Twitter the day she testified, Mata, I do it because I'm making fun. Mata came out and he did a little Twitter audio thing, and he called her Kathy Stark, and I had wrote that down. So then a little while later, I'm seeing it was Shank, so I just started calling her Kathy S.
Oh. Well, it's easy to remember because
yeah,
it's easy for me to remember because that's my mother's maiden name. There's no relation there, but that was my mother's maiden name. So,
okay, well, okay, yeah, I just sent that tweet over to you. You can take a look at it.
All right, let's pull that. But she anyway. Kathy Shank testified that she knew that there was not another Richard Allen Whiteman. So, all right, R&M production. Okay, I'm just going to do a screenshot of it. I'm not going to play it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because so I have questions, and my initial question is, there was a phone number that was on that lead sheet along with the name, and Dueling called that phone number, according to his testimony, and got Richard Allen. So that lead sheet wasn't a lead sheet if there was a Richard Whiteman, why would Richard Whiteman's lead sheet contain Richard Allen's phone number on it for Dan Dueling to call? There are people that say that Dan Dueling knew Richard Allen, like they had interactions in the past.
That is a rumor that they know one another or they knew each other. So, but that's never been confirmed.
If we're just looking at this objectively, scientifically, logically, that lead sheet, even if it had the wrong name on it, had a phone number on it that Dan Dueling supposedly called and got a hold of Rick Allen. So there's either a deep conspiracy here, or this is not a true thing, but it's from Wish TV.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to their website. Let's see.
That'd be better. That'd be better than doing a
hold on.
somebody looking at that same thing. Conflicting testimony from a specific person. Yes, Kelt, the defense absolutely can, and they have. So you probably missed it, but early on, was it last night's testimony? It must have, or last night's. So last night's live. Let me find it. We got back from lunch, and the very first thing that Baldwin says on cross, and this is the cross of who was it that was testifying before lunch? No. Anyway, Baldwin comes out, and the very first thing he said is, right before lunch, you lied to this jury. So he was impeaching Mullen. He was impeaching Mullen. So Mullen was on direct before lunch, and then we went to lunch break, and as soon as we got back from lunch, like we didn't even get any type of breathing. It was all rise, judge comes in, all rise, jury comes in, and Baldwin goes right into right before lunch, you lied to this jury.
Yes, I think they're gonna be able to present a couple of things like that. You know what I mean? Where they contradict themselves or their own statements don't add up with what they said before.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like they claimed about Richard Allen's timeline changing when he spoke to them at different times. So, I'm trying to fit. I was multitasking. Sorry.
And it turned out to be a less of an obvious lie than what it sounded like he was doing, because he said, so Mullen said that Rick Allen told him during the initial interview, that was the voluntary interview down at the station, I might have gone west on County Road 300 North. So that would correspond with the Hoosier Harvester video and the timeline that the state was putting together, that he crossed that and he went westbound on County Road 300 North, crossed in front of the Hoosier Harvest store, and then went and parked backwards at the CPS building, walked up to the Freedom Bridge, past 3 girls, got down to the Monon High Bridge, and was waiting for somebody and looked up at one of the witnesses like he was waiting for somebody, and then apparently followed Abby and Libby to the south end of the bridge and did the deed. So that's the state's theory, and that him admitting to going westbound on County Road 300 North is a good part of that, proving that timeline or admitting that timeline happened. And so that's why it's being contested by Baldwin here so vociferously, so vehemently. And so he gives him the transcript of that interview, and it's like pages and pages and pages long, and he sits there looking through it, finds something that's kind of close to that, and Baldwin says, no, that's not what I asked you to find. I'm asking you to find exactly what you testified to. So he's like, oh, okay, I'll go look again. And it's like at least another 5 minutes. I mean, obviously 5 minutes can seem like 10 or 15 in court. Or 2 minutes can seem like 5, but it was definitely more than 2 minutes. He's looking through it. First time through it, the jury's kind of like watching him, like paging through it, not finding it. But then the second time around, when Baldwin says, no, I'm asking you to find this, and it takes him another 5 minutes, and the jury's like sitting back going, come on, dude, just find this or don't find it. And he finds something that's similar to that, but not an exact quote.
Yeah.
Are you finding that original Wish story?
No, well, it's a clip from a live, so I need more time to review that before we get into it more, I think.
Gotcha.
To make sure that's because I don't mind talking about the things, but I want to make sure I can back that up the way I thought that I'm reading it. So.
All right.
I looked at the article they have, but I didn't see that in the article I was reading. So,
okay. Well, why don't we get into it later?
Yeah, we will.
Yep, we've been on a while today, and then that'll give you time to look up all the docs that All Eyes dropped, and put your notes.
Yeah, and
together.
there's a new Todd Click document that I just saw. A motion to compel in his case, I think it was. So there's some things coming down that we need to make note of and keep track of,
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
So we've been on here.
Yeah, you got You got one of your tweets. I don't know. Somebody replied to one of your tweets, and it was retweeted.
Oh, the reply was retweeted.
Yeah. It's it's about the it was about the Dr. Core. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, there's so many notes from the day of all the different testimonies and key points from each testimony, that I am keeping track of that I want to go over. Like I said, I want to do a live this weekend to touch on those things because we're going to wrap up. So they're holding trial on Saturday, right? Is what their schedule is for now.
Saturday is, I believe, a half day. I believe Saturdays
Half day. Yeah.
Days. Yes.
So they won't have anybody too lengthy come in on Saturday morning unless they plan to stop that testimony and pick it back up on Monday morning. So they'll, this week, there's a lot to digest from just the week alone. So I'm kind of trying to do that all week along with everybody else, but I want to put together those key points and elements that matter as far as being able to get a conviction and things like that I want to talk about. So, and I know there's more you wanted to elaborate on, and we can go down these trails, and so I'm going to kind of devote a show to that, to go over the key points that we've all taken in this week.
Yeah,
and if you guys have any suggestions and there's things you want to talk about as far as those key points as well, I'll let you know when we're going to go live and we can get in there and discuss them.
Perfect. All right, we've been going for almost 3 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes now.
Yeah.
And we're going to be seeing more stuff come out. So
yeah, it's going to be the days are going to be wrapping up, and we're all going to be looking at what happened today. And I know Joe and I are as well. So I appreciate you holding the live and making your way down there and getting into court and doing what you had to do to get in there. That, it's not an easy task, and I appreciate you for doing that and then coming out and sharing with us what were able to glean from the testimony that you heard.
Absolutely. And it was tiring, but it was worth it, I think.
Yeah.
To be able to be there in court. And I was talking to lawyer Lee about this, that sitting in a YouTube and watching a broadcast of a trial like we did with the Karen Reed trial, like we did with the Hannah Gutierrez trial, like we did with the Benefield trial. I mean, that's one thing, but to be there in person, to be in that courtroom, to hear the voices of the people, to be able to, I mean, when we're standing,
feel that energy much deeper and more personal.
Yes.
This makes it surreal, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It was very surreal. And then meeting lawyer Lee and Andrea Burkhart was also very surreal.
Yeah, I could imagine. I imagine so. And we do appreciate all their hard work and their efforts as well. Andrea, lawyer Lee, Bob, Ali, the other ones that are all down there, they're doing great, and trying to keep us informed of what's happening, and talk about it. We appreciate it, because if it wasn't for them, we really wouldn't get the firsthand knowledge that we want to get, because the media is only going to come out and touch on certain things, and they're going to wrap up their news piece in 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So hearing them come out and talk about all the aspects is important, because then we get the feel of what it was really like. Yes.
Thanks everybody for joining the chat, except for a couple bumps and hiccups here and there. It was a really good chat. Thanks to the mods. Yeah. Thanks Butterfly. Thank you so much, Butterfly. I know you're doing other stuff too, so being in here was very much appreciated.
Soldier on, Hunter Johnson. Soldier on, buddy. You guys have y'all have a great afternoon. Chat can handle themselves, and I know that. I just, there's no reason to be mean to each other, but y'all do you.
All right.
Freedom of speech and all that.
Yep. Everybody have a good afternoon. Thanks, Salty. Appreciate you.
Bye. You're welcome. Bye.